Chapter 101, Yellow Flash. Ryo, read this scroll. Over the past few days, Shikako was handling the management of the camp instead of Ryo. After all, that's what he was doing before Ryo ever got there. Ryo took the scroll that Shikako had, and found it to be sealed with spiritual power. It said that the third Mizukage had already reached the Wave Country, and that Konoha's camp is heavily under surveillance. Ryo remembers the third Mizukage from the manga. It was from the time when the Rikudo Sennin summoned the cages of the past. He had no ideas about his abilities and ninjutsus. Ryo wasn't used to not having information from the manga. Shikaku-ni-san, tell me what we have on the third Mizukage. Ryo had to ask Shikaku Nara. What Ryo didn't expect is that Shikako shook his head for a while and then said, "We don't know anything about his abilities. The Mist's policies include hiding such information even from their own ninjas." This crushed Ryo's hopes of getting information. This is the first time he has to face such a powerful foe without knowing anything about them. Later at the camp meeting, Ryo told the ones present about the news. He then asked them the same question he asked Shikaku. The answers were no different from the one he already had. The only valuable information came from the Uchiha clan, who proposed that he was a disciple of the first Mizukage. After the meeting, Ryo decided to test the third Mizukage. Intelligence is the most important thing for a ninja to get before battle. He must figure out something about his foe, otherwise he'll be in a very bad position. Ryo's plan was to get a shadow clone to sneak into the Mist's camp and sneak attack the third Mizukage, to find out if he has any kind of Kekii Ginkai. In the evening, after arriving at the Mist camp, Ryo used lightning release, shadow clone jutsu. The clone then proceeded to changing his height and appearance, and hiding his chakra. The lightning clone sneaked smoothly into the camp, and identified the third Mizukage's tent with his perception. Finding his target, he entered the lighting chakra mode. Ryo didn't want to be discovered, but he wanted to blink in with the lightning chakra mode flicker. He went directly for his enemy's throat. The third Mizukage have already detected the clone when the lightning chakra mode broke out. He didn't feel troubled by the attack, because as the blade hit his throat, he had already been replaced by a piece of wood. Body replacement? When? Ryo didn't expect the third Mizukage to be so fast. He actually took no more than 3 seconds to reach his enemy with the lightning chakra mode, but the third Mizukage managed to avoid his attack. Sneak attacking me? If it was Konoha's Minato, he might have been successful. As for you, you're done for. After he finished his words, the third Mizukage formed a finger gun with his hand end, and has created a liquid bullet that he shot out from the tip of his index finger to go through Ryo's clone. It dissipated immediately. A lightning clone? Seems like it was a trial. The third Mizukage understood what Ryo is going for, but he didn't care. He believed that the enemy's provocation didn't get him to reveal any valuable intelligence. However, Ryo was extremely happy with the result of his raid, for he now knows that the third Mizukage is part of the Hokage clan. The technique water release, water gun has been also used by the second Mizukage in the manga. He used it to attack Onaki. It was a ninjutsu exclusive to the Hokage clan. With such a great result, Ryo retreated satisfied. He recalled what he knew about the Hokage clan in the manga. He recalled 2 main clearly stated points. The first was that they used hydrification. Similar to elementization, it was a technique that allows one to turn his body into liquid. The second Mizukage turned his body into oil-like substance, while Suijutsu turned into water. The second was that they were easily restrained by lightning, and could not afford to be dehydrated. They get paralyzed and cannot use hydrification by lightning, and they need to replenish their bodies with water constantly. Learning this baseline about the third Mizukage, Ryo became confident that he can cope with him in the future. Over the following few days, Ryo focused on practicing ice and lightning release. While that was happening, after the withdrawal of the rock ninjas from Fire Country's borders with the Earth Countries, their main forces were focused in the Lightning Country's battlefield. There, the main forces became the rocks, the clouds, and Konohas. On that battlefield, Minato, Konoha's Yellow Flash was well known on the battlefield. The origin of the name Konoha's Yellow Flash came from the fact that he was able to kill a dozen of rock jonins in an instant. On that day, he carried out a reconnaissance mission with his team and other several Konoha ninjas. The rock ninjas had information about it, and laid an ambush for Minato and his team. The ambush was made up of dozens of ninjas, including many jonins. Konoha ninjas' faces were all heavy, with the exception of Team Minato who looked with pity at the ambush attempt. "Hey uncles, relax, and keep your eyes wide open, for you're about to see something mythical," said Obito to his fellow Konoha ninjas. With Obito's voice fading, 3 kunao flying towards the rock ninjas. He then used the Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu and the 3 kunao became dozens. With that, the slaughter began. All what the ninjas from both camps were able to see was a yellow flash jumping in around. In just 5 seconds, Minato was back at his initial position, and rock ninjas began to collapse one by one. Konoha's ninjas were in shock. It only took Minato 5 seconds to kill all of those enemies. "Minato-sensei, you're so cool," Obito said to Minato, with the appearance of a brain-dead fan. "Idiot! As if Minato-sensei still needs you to say that he's cool. Kakashi Yaro, you want to fight? You two should stop being so noisy." Seeing that the two were about to quarrel again, Rin could only interfere and ask them to stop. "Me? Minato-san? What was that technique you used right now?" One of Konoha's chunins asked cautiously. "This jutsu's name is Spiraling Flash Super Round Dance Howl Style 3, a combination of Flying Thunder God and Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsus." Minato did not hide his technique, explaining with a smile. "Oi, Kakashi, what do you think of that name?" said Obito with a low voice. Long and awkward. For once the two agreed on something. "That's right." Rin also agreed with them. While the rest of Konoha's ninjas did feel that the naming was a bit awkward, that didn't keep them from practically worshipping Minato. Chapter 102, Battle Progress. The news about Minato killing dozens of rock ninjas in that ambush spread everywhere. All the ninjas on the Lightning Country battlefield knew about it. But in fact, most were also skeptical about it as well. Even a Kage shouldn't be able to kill a group with that many jonins in just an instant. When it comes to rock ninjas, Oniki issued an order that all his troops could not accept. If on a mission, you happen to encounter Minato Namikaze of Konoha, give up your mission and retreat immediately. You will not be penalized for doing so. However, this order was deemed confidential by the 3rd Tsu's Hokage, and the rock did not publicize the shameful order they received. Quickly, the ninjas began to appreciate Oniki's reasoning, as Minato became the main harvester of souls in the following few battles. If you encounter Minato without escaping as soon as you do, you will never get a chance to survive. That was the sentence circulating around the rock camp. In countless battles, Konoha's yellow flash made his power recognized time and again. Some even said that he had already surpassed all 5 Kages. While Minato's name was ringing through the Lightning Country, Ryo and the 3rd Mizukage's battle started. Victory and defeat for both camp depended entirely on the outcome of their matchup. In terms of brute strength, Ryo was far from the 3rd Mizukage, but his lighting and ice were suited perfectly to restrain him. One could never speculate the result of their battle. Ryo's method of dealing with the Mizukage was using the Denjiki Rays Nan to create an electromagnetic field, thus limiting the 3RDS hydrification. Then Ryo relied on his ice release to cope with him in that weakened state of his. The 3RDS Mizukage was plagued with Ryo's tactics that were able of restraining all of his usual techniques. He could only fight at 70% of his power and could not beat Ryo. This way, the battle between the two was locked in a stalemate, and days went on until June of year 45. Continuous warfare had its heavy toll on all 5 countries, including Konoha. Therefore, most of Ryo's promotion was promoted to the rank of Chunin, including Might Guy, after a Chunin exam. Might Do's horrific strength when he opened the 8th gate of death made the top of Konoha reconsider their views on Taijutsu specialists, and thus led to Guy's promotion. Ryo had been leading the troops of the Wave Country battlefield for over half a year at that point. The only Kage tier ninjas on both sides had no way to beat each other, and balance between the two sides did not change that much. Over the course of those 6 months, dozens of battles took place between the two camps, ranging for all-out battles to small skirmishes. Ryo had to face the 3rd Mizukage no less than 20 times during that period. With his free training, Ryo accumulated a lot of combat experience, and his strength greatly improved. However, he was still in no position to take out the Mizukage. Despite the battlefield being in such a stale state, Ryo wasn't anxious at all. Facing the 3rd Mizukage, his strength is steadily increasing. Unlike Ryo, the Mizukage was concerned with the way things were going. With every single battle, he could feel Ryo's progress compared to the previous time they met. This made him really anxious. If this carried on, Ryo should soon be able to overcome him. On top of that, the Hidden Mist village was in the critical time of passing over the power of the Sanbai. Neither Yagura nor the Sanbai Jinchuriki could leave the village. The village had no high-tier ninjas to support this battlefield, and that made the Mizukage even more anxious. At that time, Ryo had no time to pay attention to the Mizukage's movements, because Jiraiya was coming to the Wave Country battlefield. On that day, Ryo was supposed to meet Shikaku Nara, who had been taking care of the camp management for a long time. However, as soon as Shikaku sat down, Ryo disappeared into a cloud of white smoke. Shikaku Nara had been thinking for a long time that Ryo was being lazy and ditching his responsibilities. And this incident wasn't the first one. Ryo's had long been eccentric. However, it didn't take Ryo long to come back. He had been brought via reverse summoning to Mount Myaboku by Fukasaku, who went on and returned to the camp along with him and Jiraiya via reverse summoning once again. It actually took Shikaku a while to wrap his mind around what happened, as he looked at the three in shock. Jiraiya-chan, Ryo-chan, I'll go back to Mount Myaboku. Ma is waiting for me to have breakfast. Okay, sorry for the trouble, boss. Goodbye, Fukasaku-sama. After Fukasaku left, Ryo directly asked Jiraiya, Jiraiya-san, what brings you to the Wave Country? And why are you in such a hurry that you resorted to reverse summoning? Well, Sarutobi-sensei asked me to help you deal with the third Mizukage, so that you could then go to the Lightning Country and join forces with Minato to deal with the third Raikage. The third Raikage himself joined the battle. Ryo was so surprised that he had to ask. Well, his son and the Hakubi Jinchuriki lost to Minato, so he decided to go to the battlefield himself. Jiraiya explained. Ryo recalled the scene from the anime, where Minato faced the man to be fourth Raikage along with his brother. He relied on his speed and actually managed to beat A, and during the battle, he left a flying thunder god seal on B. During the second round of attack, he managed to teleport behind the Hakubi Jinchuriki and placed a blade near his neck, while the latter managed also to quickly point his blade at Minato's abdomen. In the end, neither side wanted to make a sacrifice. Hey kid, you're being rude here. I'm talking and you're already distracted, said Jiraiya helplessly as he saw the wondering look on Ryo's face. Sorry. I remembered a few things about Minato-Nisan. Ryo was embarrassed and scratched his head. Alright. Now kid, have other questions. Jiraiya got used to Ryo wandering away, so he didn't bother asking him about those memories. Yes, I do, Jiraiya-san. Is it really okay for you to leave the Wind Country battlefield? Not long ago, our forces and the rock ninjas attacked the sand at the same time. In result, Raza and Cho were seriously injured, and the rest of their ranks suffered really heavy losses. There won't be anything big happening at their side anytime soon. So, why don't you just go support Minato-Nisan directly? It's because of the lightning chakra mode of the third Raikage. You also have that technique, so you know how much defense it can grant. The third Raikage is also extremely fast. This isn't really my type of matchup. Ryo nodded, and said he was right. Indeed, in this situation, sending Ryo is the best choice. Well kid, tell me whatever you've gathered on the third Mizukage. Their secrecy is too tight for me to know something of value. Ryo explained to Jiraiya all he knew through his long experience fighting the third Mizukage, and gave him a detailed explanation about his powers and fighting style. So with that being done, the two worked out a plan to apply tomorrow, in order to take care of the third Mizukage once and for all. Chapter 103, The Mist's Retreat. The following day, Konoha and the Mist went to battle again. As before, Ryo went straight to fight the third Mizukage. Since Jiraiya arrived with reverse summoning, only Ryo and Shikaku knew about his presence. Ryo ordered that the matter should not be exposed for the time being. After his battle with the third Mizukage began, the plan was for Jiraiya to kill the Mizukage's guard before joining Ryo to finish to the Mizukage himself. The 3 RDS usually had the 3 RDS Anbu for opponent. Both were reliant on ninjutsu, and close in level. None of them had ever got an edge of the other during the past 6 months. The aim of Ryo's plan was to finish a Quasi-Kage and Kage at one battle, so that the Mist take a severe hit when it comes to high-end combat power. There were only 3 of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist left alive, with JZ Biwa's and Reiga Kurosuke's morals being shattered by the incident. Ryo also speculated that they still had powerful ninjas left in the village. It is impossible for a village such as the Hidden Mist to have Kage tier ninja being the Mizukage. But since they have spent so much time fighting Ryo and his team without bringing in any reinforcements, there must be something wrong happening within their village. Killing a Kage and a Quasi-Kage should most probably push the Mist to retreat, ending the warfare in the Wave Country. This should lead to him not having to worry about supporting his camp here when he goes to the Lightning Country. Jiraiya was a veteran Kage tier ninja. It wasn't much trouble for him to kill a Quasi Kage, so he put his attention on the Mizukage's guard at first. Their ninjutsu showdown didn't take too long before Jiraiya found his opening to finish him, leaving spectacularly as usual. On the other side, the battle between Ryo and the third Mizukage was at its peak. Having fought each other many times before, the two knew very well each other's strength. With the help of the electromagnetic field produced by his Denjiki Raise Nan, Ryo practically killed his opponent's potential to use hydrification, thus limiting his power by around 30%. But the third Mizukage's power was so simple to be limited to hydrification. Just like Mengetsu Hojiki, the third was capable of wielding all 7 legendary swords, switching between those of the 4 swordsmen killed by Du. That was the main reason why Ryo could not take him down for so long. With the added power brought by their swords, the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist could actually pose a threat to a Kage. The power of such swords in the hands of the Mizukage himself was immense. He relied on these knives in battle. So even without his hydrification techniques, he was still very powerful. It was just that Ryo was getting slowly familiar with the 4 swords, and his consecutive battles against the third Mizukage allowed him to accumulate a lot of combat experience. Even without Jiraiya's help, if Ryo keeps this progress he should probably be able to take the third Mizukage down around within 2 months. Ryo kept fighting his opponent, while keeping attention to the guard's chakra. Once it faded, he used his ice to limit the Mizukage's movement while once again condensing an ice bow. Like before, Ryo pulled the bowstring, as crystal clear ice arrow appeared. The third Mizukage felt a huge threat from the little arrow, and quickly waved the sword he had in his hand to carve out path in the ice around him, in order to be able to escape. But at the same time, Jiraiya rushed in blocking his path, so the Mizukage could not escape in time. Following the plan, Jiraiya then directly hit into Mount Miyaboku. He saw Ryo's arrow coming. The arrow directly hit the Mizukage's shoulder. It then blossomed, just like before, into an ice flower that grew bigger and bigger, engulfing the third Mizukage in ice. Shatter! Ryo controlled his ice, and just like the 1,000 ninjas before him, the third Mizukage also shattered with the ice, turning into red blood ice mist. A short while later, Fukasaku, who had reversed summoned Jiraiya to Mount Miyaboku, returned with the latter to the battlefield. The blood-red ice mist had not dissipated yet, allowing them to witness the plan's success. Haha! Kid, you're getting stronger and stronger, worthy of being my disciple. Jiraiya laughed over Ryo's shoulder. He has just been facing Ryo's ice arrow, and felt the strong natural energy condensed within it. It was also very clear to him that it was condensed to an extent that ensured the birth of great power once it exploded. Jiraiya-san, I still need your help. We need to force 1,000 mist ninjas into getting close to each other. I want to end this battle. All right. Jiraiya nodded in agreement. While he hated war and killing, on such a battlefield, he could only afford to have compassion towards Konoha's ninjas. He went on to summon Gamabunta, his trusty partner with whom he had fought for many years, and they attacked. Together, they managed to gather a large number of mist ninjas in the center of the battlefield. The mist ninjas were very familiar with this scene. Last time this happened, Ryo killed over 1,000 of them. They were not willing to sit still and follow, and they tried to escape. But it was too late. By the time they realized they were being gathered, Ryo's arrow was ready. The bright ice arrow hit the middle of the ground, and constantly grew bigger and bigger, engulfing close to 1,000 mist ninjas in ice. Ryo then shattered the ice as before, dyeing the center of the battlefield red. Monster! He is a monster. The mist ninjas finally collapsed completely, fleeing without any resistance. Ryo did not make his men chase them. He knew that their suffering has only begun, and he didn't need to add to it. 2 days after the battle ended, the Hyuga twins reported that the mist camp started to retreat. It was just like Ryo had thought. There is a problem within the hidden mist, since killing the Mizukage made them basically unable to fight back. After the complete evacuation of the mist camp, Ryo held his last meeting, saying what he was about to do, and handing over the command of the camp to Shikaku Nara. Ryo knew he had to get the medical team to accompany him, but unfortunately, he could not bring them with reverse summoning. They just had to walk their way to the Lightning Country. In the evening, Inoichi Yamanaka called Ryo to his tent, where Shikaku Nara and Choza Akamichi also waited for him. The one talking the most was Shikaku, mainly warning Ryo about the Third Raikage. Unlike the Hidden Mist with their secrecy policies, the Third Raikage's glorious acts were known to everyone. Even the third Hokage could not dare to claim that he knows he could beat him. But Ryo felt he had nothing to worry about. According to the original storyline, Minato should have already developed the Flying Thunder God to great extents. In this world of ninja, victory is brought by the ultimate speed brings victory. Minato has developed Flying Thunder God and Rei's Nan, reaching the level of the third Hokage and Reikage. With such an ally, Ryo did not worry about the Reikage, especially that he wasn't weak himself. Sure, he was not at that level, but he was not to be underestimated either. Chapter 104, Prestige. After leaving Inoichi, Shikaku, and Choza in the evening, Ryo got back to his tent and went to sleep. The next day, on the early morning, he was reverse summoned by Fukasaku to Mount Miyaboku. Ryo-chan, I called you so early. I guess you didn't have breakfast, let's have it together, said Fukasaku, enthusiastically. Ryo was offered a table full of insects, getting him to cry without tears. Ryo battled his urge to vomit as he ate along with Fukasaku and Shima. And then Fukasaku went to the lightning country from which he reversed summoned Ryo. After expressing his deep and sincere gratitude, Ryo went straight to the tent where Minato was located. Even though they haven't met over the past 3 years, Ryo was still familiar enough with Minato to recognize his chakra. And even if he made a mistake about it somehow, he'd still find him, as the ones with most chakra in the camp were all gathered in that tent. Inside the tent, Minato was having a meeting with the higher-ups of the camp. Ryo's sudden intrusion happened to interrupt one of them as he was talking. The man was surprised and a little angry. He yelled at Ryo, "Who are you? And how dare you actually break into our meeting?" At first sight, Minato recognized Ryo. He wanted to grate him and him to take a seat along with them. He didn't expect someone to speak first, and slammed his head helplessly. Seeing Minato's expression, Ryo felt that he had caused him some trouble. As Minato was about to interfere, he heard Ryo's voice in his head, "Minato-Nisan, I'm okay. Please let me handle this." Minato thought about it quickly and then agreed. He also wanted to see Ryo's growth over the past few years. "Alright. But be careful. This person is the head of the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Kataki. He's quasi-Kage tier. You should be careful." "Oh. The Uchiha clan head? I actually had a good impression of Uchiha clan. Now that has changed a little bit." Finishing his words, Ryo entered the lightning chakra mode. "Lightning chakra mode? Are you a cloud ninja?" said Kataki in surprise. "Of course I'm not. Uchiha-san, hasn't anyone told you not to yell in front of a Kage tier ninja?" As Ryo finished his words, Kataki witnessed a flash of lightning, followed by the cold sensation brought by a crystal-clear ice scalpel placed on his neck. You're looking for death." Kataki, the elder of the Uchiha clan, felt a great threat from Ryo. He was furious as he opened his Sharingan and attacked him with Genjutsu. Genjutsu is actually a spiritual attack. Ryo had immense spiritual power from being both an Uchiha and a Yamanaka, with it being enhanced as he crossed over. One should have at least a Mangekyo Sharingan for his Genjutsu to pose any threat to him. Ryo used said immense power and countered Kataki's attack. The latter's eyes gradually became hollow. "Hehe, that's all, Uchiha clan head." After dealing with Kataki, Ryo left the ice lightning chakra mode, and walked toward Minato to stand by his side. Minato was very dissatisfied with Ryo's way of handling the situation. He felt that this should cause him trouble. "Minato-san. This gentleman is," said a jonin carefully while staring at Ryo's eyes. The attendants were no fools. Ryo treated a quasi-Kage in this manner and dared to sit in the position of Minato's deputy. He must be one of their own, with a great relationship with Minato. "Ryo, enough problems. Please introduce yourself." Minato nodded to the jonin and finally talked. "Hello everyone. I'm Ryo Yamanaka, Chief Commander of Konoha's medical force, and a Kage tier ninja. It's a pleasure to meet you all." Saying that, a prestigious vibe surrounded Ryo. Everyone's faces looked either heavy or cheerful. The result of him imposing his power, and then shocking everyone with his statue was obvious. No matter what their expression was, everyone had a lot of respect for Ryo. "Alright. Now, let's continue with our meeting." After the meeting ended, everyone left, with only Ryo remaining with Minato. "Ryo. I didn't let you deal with the situation for you to make a ruckus. When Uchiha Kataki left, he looked at you as if he wanted to kill you," said Minato to Ryo, whose face seemed indifferent. Don't worry Nisan, he's no opponent of mine. I am worried that because of this incident, the Uchiha family could grow distant with the village. That won't help us in upcoming battles. You're not the Hokage yet, and you think so much for the village already. Rest assured Nisan. The Uchiha and the rest of the village are hanging on to the same rope. Whether it's glory and prosperity or loss and damage, it will hit both together. The Uchiha will not obstruct our battles. Said Ryo, without any worries. I hope so. But talking about strength, yours has went up greatly over the past 3 years. Your lightning chakra mode speed is not below that of the third Raikage's son. I've been practicing the lightning chakra mode for years. Of course I'm not going to be any less fast than him. My ice teleportation has also improved. That A should be no opponent of mine. Said Ryo with confidence. Minato-sensei, why did you call us so late? Just when Minato was about to answer Ryo, a gentle female voice came from outside the tent. You 3 are here. Come on in. Minato smiled and let the 3 enter. Of Kakashi, Rin, and Obito, the latter was the first to have his eyes meet Ryo. He kept staring at him and looking curiously. He wasn't sure whether the one in front of him was his friend or not. Hey! You can't recognize me Obito? Said Ryo with a smile. Ryo Yero. It's really you. How come you're so tall? Said Obito excitedly. Baka. Recognize people with their looks not their height. Hey, long time no see. Kakashi greeted Ryo after mocking Obito. Ryo, I haven't seen you for a long time. They say that women are most sensitive, and when Rin saw Ryo after such a long time, she couldn't control her emotions for long before tears of joy started flowing out of her eyes. Hey Rin, don't cry. I don't like seeing you cry. Seeing his good friend's tears, Ryo wanted to keep the happy mood. Ryo Yero, I'm a Chunin now. I've also killed a Takubitsu Jonin the other day. Very powerful isn't it? Obito proudly showed off his achievements. Yes, very powerful. But hey, I just killed the Mizukage very recently. Does that make me even more powerful? Said Ryo. The third Mizukage, you? You're already, Kakashi asked with disbelief. Yes, I'm Kage tier. Chapter 105, Teacher. Kage. Kage tier. Obito gazed at Ryo in disbelief. Ryo, how fast can you progress? Rin was shocked. You're really a freak. Even Kakashi, who'd always been calm, couldn't help but react to what Ryo had said. After being on the battlefield for quite a decent time, they certainly understood well what Kage tier means. A Kage tier ninja is roughly the equivalent of a weapon of mass destruction of the battlefield. One could threaten a whole country. Well, you shouldn't belittle yourself, you've also made great progress. Being the good sensei he was, Minato encouraged his students. Speaking of that, Kakashi, Rin, what's your current level now? Obito was able to beat a Takubitsu Jonin, the two of you should be even stronger. Ryo was interested so he asked. I am at the level of a Jonin. I'm not elite Jonin though. Replied Kakashi. I'm a medical ninja now. I didn't put too much work into ninjutsu. When it comes to battle, I'm at most Chunin level. Rin was a bit embarrassed, as she was the weakest of the trio. Ryo remembered Rin being a medical ninja, being the one who transplanted Obito's eye to Kakashi in the manga. The events still progressed towards getting her to be a medical ninja. But now with Ryo's methods, she could be on a whole other level. You 3 will come with me starting tomorrow. I'll help you get stronger. Initially, Ryo thought about teaching Rin more about medical ninjutsu. But then thought, if he's teaching one of them, he could just teach all of them. So he called Kakashi and Obito along. I'm busy these days. With Ryo teaching you, I'll have less to worry about. Minato was actually worried lately about the fact that he had no time to teach the trio because of the war. Now, with Ryo taking this initiative, he can focus on managing the camp and with no more qualms. The following day, the 4 friends went to the woods behind Konoha's camp. Alright Rin, wait a little bit. Kakashi, Obito, attack me together. I need to understand your shortcomings. The two looked at each other, and Kakashi pulled his knife, infusing it with Chidori, while Obito immediately threw a smoke bomb. Kakashi disappeared into the smoke, and Obito attacked with all kinds of fire release jutsus. Ryo didn't think that the two, with all their quarreling, would cooperate so well. While he had the fire release jutsus launched at him, Kakashi hid and waited calmly for a chance to kill. Obito's fire had no influence on Ryo, as his ice wall fended it off with ease. Seeing that, Kakashi was anxious. He stopped hiding, and used his clan's signature flicker to approach Ryo. The Chidori-infused knife approached Ryo, who just smiled and moved the ice wall to block the attack. Fire release, Dragon Flame release Song Jutsu. With Ryo's wall moved, Obito seized the opportunity. Ryo looked at the two with some admiration. Their cooperation was top-notch, and even an elite ninja could not afford to let his guard down with them for a moment. Unfortunately for them, it wasn't enough. Ryo threw an ice scalpel, splitting through Obito's fire dragon, and then his body flashed as he entered the ice lightning chakra mode. Immediately, he flickered behind Obito, engulfing him within ice, and then did the same to Kakashi, who didn't have time to respond. It all happened within the blink of an eye. Rin, who didn't have any dojutsu, only saw lightning flashing over the heads of her teammates, followed by them getting frozen. Ryo, is that a flicker jutsu? Or a space-time one? Rin was surprised to see her teammates frozen just like that. That's the lightning chakra mode flicker. You saw me use this before, but now I've mastered this technique even further, said Ryo with a smile. How can it be so fast? It feels more like Minato-sensei's flying thunder god. That's just because you don't have a dojutsu, so you can't see my movements. The two chatted for a while, and then Ryo remembered, his pals are still frozen. He quickly melted the ice around them. Achoo! Ryo Yamanaka! Yero! One of these days I'll also throw you into ice. Obito was frozen for so long that he caught a cold. But his mouth was still unscathed. Kakashi couldn't even speak, as he kept sneezing like Obito. Ryo actually got caught up chatting with Rin and forgot about them. Cough. An accident, it was an accident. I'll make it up for you by helping you get stronger. Seeing that the two did not react, Ryo resumed, Kakashi, your hiding is not bad. But unfortunately, for a censor ninja, locating you is child's play. I know, do you have a solution for that? Ryo's words succeeded in getting Kakashi's attention. Yeah, don't worry. Next is Obito. Don't you want your fire release jutsus to produce more heat? I can teach you about fire release nature transformation. I don't buy that. You don't have fire affinity. How can you teach me about that? Obito was obviously shocked by Ryo's statement, and couldn't keep himself from showing his skepticism. From a rational point of view, Ryo didn't have fire affinity indeed. It's impossible for him to experience fire nature transformation. However, Obito thought about the fact that Ryo never lied to him, so he did have some belief in what Ryo was saying. Yes, you're right. Kakashi, I have secret technique that hides one's chakra. You'll make your hiding perfect after learning it. Ryo pulled out a scroll and handed it to Kakashi. Ryo had wanted to teach this technique to Kakashi ever since he taught it to Sakumo. It should be really helpful for him. As for Obito, yes, I don't have fire affinity, but I know a lot about its theory. Do you want to learn what I know? Yeah, hurry up Ryo Yero, stop keeping me in suspense. Seeing Kakashi get such a precious jutsu, Obito felt intrigued. But he knew that the hiding technique isn't that suitable for him. He was more attracted to the fire affinity knowledge. Ryo smiled, and then proceeded to teaching Obito about fire affinity. As for Rin, Ryo taught her about modern medicine, starting from the basics. He planned on getting her familiar with his methods as soon as possible, for her to join his team that will be arriving to the Lightning Country. Just a week later, Kakashi mastered the hiding jutsu with success, and Obito's fire release jutsus also started flourishing. Rin on the other hand learned about simple first aids, Ryo's past world way. At that time also, Ryo's medical team arrived. Later in the day, Ryo took Rin to the medical team, making them take her along to rescue work to give her a chance to practice her new knowledge. Chapter 106, Secret Mission. One day, after a meeting in Konoha's camp, Minato asked Ryo to stay. Speaking of Ryo, he's been teaching the trio for half a month. Over the past 2 months, Minato didn't ask about his disciples. So today, with him asking Ryo to stay, the latter realized that he needs him for something important. Minato remained silent for a long time after everyone left, so Ryo had to ask, Minato-Nisan, is everything okay? Ryo, did you train the 3 well? They're my friends, of course I did. If that is all, I'm off. Ryo prepared to leave. Hold on, Ryo. In fact, I have a secret mission that requires your assistance. Seeing Ryo about to leave, Minato spoke out his mind. Ryo felt awkward. Minato's behavior meant that there must be something serious. What kind of mission? Ryo cut straight to the chase. I'll tell you all. A few days ago, I returned to Konoha to report to the third dating that period, there were sharp space-time fluctuations in the Wind Country. Because of my work on the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, I'm very sensitive to such fluctuations, so I noticed it. Space-time fluctuations. Minato's description made Ryo suddenly think of the movie, Naruto shipped in the movie, The Lost Tower. Could it be that Naruto had arrived, online movie streaming services? Yes. The Wave Country is near the Wind Country, and the Hokage speculates that these fluctuations come from the legendary Reborn ancient kingdom. The third speculation also confirmed Ryo's hunch. The mission is to go to the ancient kingdom of Ronin to find out the reason behind these fluctuations. Yes, that's one thing. The other is to protect the Queen of Iran. On the surface, Ryo was really calm. But deep down inside, he was ecstatic. He didn't expect to participate in such a mission. This was the only story he knew about that involved the passing through time and space, within the Naruto verse. Ryo was really looking forward to it. Minato didn't mean to interrupt Ryo's wandering in imagination, but continued to say, Hokage-sama asked me to assign someone to complete the mission as fast as possible. I was thinking of going there and taking you along, accompanied by the head of the Aberme clan and Kakashi. Ryo nodded. 2 Kage-tier ninja, a top-tier sensor ninja and Kakashi should be enough for the mission. Seeing Ryo's approval, Minato let Ryo prepare himself to go directly to the Wind Country the following day using Flying Thunder God. The next day, Ryo and Kakashi came to Minato's tent after having breakfast. There was man with no presence, wearing sunglasses in the tent. It was Shibuya Aberme. Shibuya Aberme was Shino's father, one of the 12 strong Konoha genin in the manga. He himself was very strong. When it comes to one-on-one fight, Shibuya is Jonin tier. But in a large-scale war, his bugs can play a much greater role comparable to that of a quasi-Kage. Hello, I'm Ryo Yamanaka, pleasure to meet you. Ryo took the initiative in saluting Shibuya. The latter did not expect that Ryo would actually notice him. He didn't have much presence and was rarely noticed by others. Feeling flattered, he answered, Hello, I'm Shibuya Aberme. The pleasure is mine. Hey Kakashi, don't be so rude, introduce yourself. Ryo gave an elbow to Kakashi by his size. Hey! I just didn't notice him. Shibuya-san, I'm Hotaki Kakashi, it's my pleasure to meet you. After the three got to know each other, Minato gave Shibuya and Kakashi a brief explanation of the mission, and then used Flying Thunder God to bring the three along to a spot in the Wind Country's desert. I marked this place before during the Second World War. Now we need to locate Riran. Ryo, Shibuya, it's your turn. Ryo nodded and entered Sage mode. That was his best bet in order to enhance his perception enough to locate Rimayaku. Locating Rimayaku equates locating Riran. On the other hand, Shibuya spread out his bugs, and he only had to analyze the information they sent back. Even with Sage mode, Ryo found within the scope of his perception. So he left Sage mode and waited for Shino to find something. After a while, Shino had a result. I found it, my bugs told me that there was a huge energy in East. He then proceeded to summon back all the bugs he sent out, and walked leading the way for the others. It took them a while or so before Riran appeared to everyone. After sneaking in, Kakashi looked around and said, It's a prosperous country, unscathed by war. Seems like everyone can live and work in peace. Don't draw your conclusions too early, Kakashi. This country indeed looks very harmonious, but it keeps giving me a strange feeling. Said Minato. Indeed Minato-Nisan, I think we shouldn't go head-on yet. We should first split up and look for anything that might be suspicious. Ryo's proposal was accepted by everyone, and the foyer split into 2 groups to collect information about the surroundings. Ryo, just now, Minato-sensei said that the country felt strange. Do you agree? Asked Kakashi. Ryo nodded and answered, On the surface, this looks like a paradise preserved from war. But did you notice the high tower in the town center? I felt massive energy coming from it. And that energy is connected to the people on the street. It's just too abnormal. Hearing Ryo, Kakashi nodded, and gave the matter a thought. The two continued to move forward. They didn't find anything along the way. They didn't encounter the soldiers who appeared in the movie, nor did they hear Sarah's singing. Ryo decided to try to locate her himself. As soon as he entered Sage mode, Ryo was shocked by what he perceived. Kakashi, this time, we might have some trouble. Ryo said with a bitter smile. What's wrong? We have 2 cage-tier ninjas on our side. What could ever cause us trouble? Kakashi just couldn't believe it. Ryo didn't explain, and he ran, followed by Kakashi in the direction of what he perceived. On Minato's side, he encountered an armored puppet of Varan. Of course, he didn't want to face them. He was on a mission to protect the queen, and having a conflict with the kingdom's armed forces was a bad idea. But this puppet had already identified him as an enemy, and it never stopped its pursuit. He could only destroy it. What he did not expect, was that it started repairing itself before his eyes. Chapter 107, Big Trouble. The self-repair of the armored puppet made Minato and Shibi sigh of frustration, as there wasn't a clear way to take out these puppets. Ryo and Kakashi arrived to the desert outside Raran. There were dozens of armored puppets surrounding a red-hair girl. Kushina-sensei. How is she here? Kakashi immediately recognized Kushina from her iconic hair. You ask me? How am I supposed to know? Answered Ryo. You're right, Ryo, this is indeed big trouble. Great. Ryo, come help me get rid of these damn things. Kushina also saw Ryo and Kakashi and called them for help. When hearing Kushina's appeal, Ryo and Kakashi could only shake their heads helplessly and join the battle. Kushina-ne-san. What are you doing here? Asked Ryo. It was as if Kushina was ready to respond. She immediately said, it's a mission. The old man sent me here to help you complete the task. So that's what it is. But, Kushina-sensei, I remember Minato-sensei saying to us that this was a mission for only the 4 of us. When adults talk, children should not interrupt. Hearing Kakashi's words, Kushina hurried to shut him up. All right. Kakashi, let's escape from this circle. These puppets are linked to the Rimayaku at the bottom of Varan. They can self-repair indefinitely. It's useless for us to fight. Ryo quickly said what he knew from the movie. How do you know that? Kakashi felt that Ryo's knowledge of the matter was bizarre. The Yamanaka clan has records about the Rimayaku, and the energy radiated from the tower is the same as the one I feel from these puppets, so I made that guess. Kakashi nodded, and stopped asking question. The 3 made their way out of the puppet circle, but they were still being chased. Ryo said that these puppets can perceive chakra, and are able in consequence to trace them. While both him and Kakashi could hide their chakra, that solution wasn't going to cut it. Suddenly, Ryo remembered how Naruto shared his Kyuubi chakra with Ninja Alliance. Kushina-ne-san, can you connect me to your Kyuubi chakra? Why? Asked Kushina in confusion. These puppets can follow us by following the chakra in-out bodies. I have secret camouflage jutsu that can hide one's chakra. If you connect me to your Kyuubi chakra, my technique should also work on you. Alright, that shouldn't be much of a problem. And Kurama actually can hide his own chakra. After saying that, Kushina gave Ryo some of the Kyuubi's chakra with Kurama's help. Ryo then proceeded to hiding the 2 of them, and it was done with success. Kakashi, use the camouflage jutsu. Shouted Ryo to Kakashi. With that, all 3 had their chakra hidden, and the armored puppets did not sense them anymore, and stopped their pursuit. The 3 took the opportunity to retreat to a safe place away from their pursuers. After they took a break, Ryo asked Kushina, Kushina-ne-san, you can tell me now. How did you manage to escape from Konoha? And don't you fear that the 3rd might find out? I made Kurama hide my chakra, and then asked him to help me out making a long-lasting shadow clone. Sensei, why did you leave Konoha? After Ryo, Kakashi had his own question. I don't know, boredom? I haven't left the village in a long time. And the last time Minato came to the village, he didn't even come to see me. I can only come see him myself. Hearing Kushina, Ryo sighed helplessly. It was impossible for them to quit this mission to get her back. And also, she was caged here, so she could hold her own. Alright. Ne-san, you'll have to stay. I'll help you with Minato-ne-san, but you must promise me to return to Konoha as soon as this mission ends. Hearing Ryo, Kushina got excited and immediately nodded in agreement. Hearing Ryo's decision, Kakashi had nothing to say. In short, Kushina-ne-san is already here. We must now meet up with Minato-ni-san as soon as possible. We can't stay split up anymore. As soon as Ryo finished his words, the three heard a clear voice of a girl singing, coming out of ruins in the distance. Ryo, this song, should we go over and see? Asked Kakashi. The place from which the song was coming was one that's out of the reach of the Rimyaku. It was where Sarah appeared in the movie. Ryo decided to go there and see. The three marched there together. The voice they were hearing was getting closer and closer. They sneaked in directly from the bottom. Because they had hidden their chakra, they weren't disrupted by the guards. As they entered, they saw a red-haired girl singing under the sunlight coming from the ceiling. Ryo, she should be a Riran resident. Should we want to ask some questions? Don't move in. If we just run in like that, we'll scare her away. Kakashi's proposal was denied by Ryo. Ryo remembered that what was about to happen is Sarah's meeting with the original protagonist himself, Naruto. It wouldn't be good for that to be ruined by Kakashi. Sure enough, from within the ruins he rose. Golden spiky hair, blue eyes, 3 whisker marks on each cheek, a Konoha forehead protector. That teenage in orange sportswear was Naruto. Just like what happened in the movie, Sarah was shocked by Naruto's appearance, and ran to the exit, while Naruto followed. As soon as he followed her and faced the gate, the puppet's soldiers were there waiting and attacked him. He immediately retreated. The puppets followed, but they collapsed into pieces as they walked through the gate. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief, but Sarah was gone. If we run in like that, we'll scare her away. Kushina witnessed the accuracy of Ryo's judgment. Ryo, this boy seems to be one of Konoha's ninjas. He's wearing our forehead protector. Do you want to check what he's doing here? After looking at Naruto's forehead protector, Kakashi proposed that. We don't know who he is, just, wait. Ryo looked at Kushina, then refused Kakashi's proposal. Chapter 108, 2 Karamas. With Ryo's prevention, the three remained hidden in the rubble until Naruto left. Kushina Ni-san, let's go to Minato-ni-san. Let's ask him about this boy. Kushina nodded and followed Ryo, who guided her to Minato. The reason why Ryo stopped Kushina was because he wanted Naichiro to see the Minato and later, meet Sarah again. Ryo wanted to speculate through Naruto's reaction about what happened in the Kyuubi attack night. When the three of them were going to see Minato, they handed a fox mask to Kushina. Like the movie, this was a masked operation. Why do you want me to put this on? It's ugly. Kushina had some complaints about putting on the mask. During this task we are to wear masks. Minato-ni-san always uses them. Kakashi and I got the masks off because we saw you. Now that's we're entering Riran once again, so unlike the outside, we should keep the masks on. We should keep our identity secret from the citizens inside. After listening to Ryo, Kushina could only helplessly put on a mask. In order to facilitate their operation, the three kept their chakra hidden all the way through. They had no problems along the way until they found Minato and Shibi. The two of them were resting in a ruin, after apparently having to spend a lot of effort to get rid of the armored puppet. Ryo's trio walked in. The ruins were filled with Shibi's bugs. While the bugs didn't notice the trio's chakras, the smell of the strangers still caused them to riot. The bugs that were scattered all over the place gathered, forming a black wave that rushed towards the three. Oi oi! Shibi-san's bugs are so good? We've hidden our chakra. So how did they manage to find us? Kakashi couldn't keep his cool. If this many bugs were to attack him, he'd definitely die a very horrible death. Kushina's face was gloomy as well. Women are born with sense of disgust against insects, and even her ninja training didn't remove that sense completely. With so many bugs coming together, she had an urge to turn around and run. In the face of so many vicious insects, even Ryo's scalp started tingling. But when he perceived one of them flying away from the rest into the ruins, he finally felt relieved. Kushina-ne-san, Kakashi, don't worry. These bugs have already reported to their master. Sure enough, after a good while, Minato and Shibi walked out of the ruins together. Shibi dispersed his bugs again, and Minato walked towards Ryo. Kushina sensed Minato's emotional state, and she knew she was in trouble, immediately kneeling down to hide behind Ryo and Kakashi. Ryo, seems like you've been working hard. Did you manage to get any results out of your search? Minato's eyes were fixed on the red hair fluttering behind Ryo, and his tone was different. Kakashi looked in the direction that his sensei was looking in, and so Kushina's red hair. Nisan, let's leave the search results for later. First, I've brought you a big surprise. Ryo moved to the side, exposing the kneeling Kushina behind them. Sure, it's you Kushina. Just know, Shibi told me that his bugs found 3 people, and your hair was exposed just now. Minato said helplessly. Kushina stood up and scratched her head, she was really embarrassed. Kushina, it's dangerous to leave the village casually. If you're ever discovered by Danzo, they will have you under surveillance 24 hours a day. Kushina repeated the reasons she told Ryo about, and had Ryo on her side helping her case. Minato could accept her staying. After that, it was the routine spouse quarrel stage. Kushina was really discontented with the fact that Minato had returned to the village without passing by to meet her. Just like in the manga, Minato was never the one to win such fights, and Kushina was the one to beat Konoha's yellow flash. It all ended in him paying tribute, giving her many promises, so Kushina let him go. As for the 3 single guys besides them, they were obviously forced to watch the couple have what they currently don't. After it all ended, Ryo and Minato started talking about Naruto. The third only gave this task to me. I'm certain that no other ninjas participated, said Minato after hearing Ryo's description. But that ninja wears a Konoha head protector, and he wasn't weak. Kakashi is right. Anyway, we should confirm his identity. He is now inside Raran. Let's go find him, said Ryo. Everyone agreed with Ryo's opinion. Later Ryo's team set off together to the middle of the town, where Naruto was located. On Naruto's side, things developed almost identically to the movie. After he left Ryo's side, Naruto was surrounded by puppets. Minato was preparing to defend him, when red chakra oozed out of Naruto's body, and 2 tails appeared behind him. Kurama, who had been dormant in Kushina's body, was immediately on alert when Naruto entered the tailed coat mode. The chakra was undoubtedly his, but he was in Kushina's body. Who's this boy outside? Kushina, this boy outside has my chakra. No, there's a Kyuubi inside his body. Kurama's words surprised Kushina. She immediately delivered the news to Ryo. Far, what do you think? Asked Minato. Ryo's eyes looked vacant and lost. He looked down thinking. What they didn't see was that his heart was thumping hard. Naruto has Kurama sealed within him. Does this mean that the Kyuubi attack had occurred despite his efforts? In any case, this lad shouldn't get into trouble. Wait for me, I'll go to rescue him. Finishing his words, Minato disappeared. He left to the place where Naruto was. Kushina, let me out. I have a few things to discuss with the kid. Just as Minato left, Kurama asked Kushina to let him take control over her body. Kushina's pupils turned in scarlet red, and 3 whisker marks appeared on each of her cheeks. Hey, Ryo Yamanaka, I have something to talk to you about, said Kurama to Ryo. What Ne-san? No, hold on, you're Kurama. Ryo was startled by the Kyuubi's sudden appearance. Kakashi and Shibi also felt that something was different about Kushina. Ryo immediately froze them and went to the corner with the Kyuubi. Kurama, do you have anything to ask me? Kid, do you have an ability to predict the future? Said Kurama, staring at Ryo. Ryo remained silent for a while then said, yes, I can see images about the future. Kurama could feel that Ryo wasn't lying. Kushina's face, that showed the Kyuubi's emotions, became heavy. Did this happen, because I'll be controlled in the future, to kill Kushina? Asked Kurama, after some hesitation. Ryo nodded, and Kurama had his answer. His chakra suddenly became very unstable, and it became more like a volcano that's about to erupt. Ryo helplessly watched the Kyuubi in his rage. After a minute or so, his emotions gradually eased. Kid, I don't care what your plans are. In short, you must protect Kushina. I don't want to change Jinchurikis anytime soon. After Kurama finished his words, he returned control to Kushina. Chapter 109, Naruto. Hey Ryo, what did you talk about with Kurama? Asked Kushina. Nothing. Didn't you hear what we just said? Kushina shook her head. When she gave control over her body to Kurama, he immediately blocked her perception. She had no idea about the topic of their conversation. She got more and more curious, but Kurama wouldn't let her hear anything. Ryo wasn't talking either, so she got confused and irritated to the extreme. This whole incident, with the Kyuubi taking over Kushina's body, was sensed by Kurama, the other Kurama. Naruto, did you just feel the same chakra as mine right now? Kurama asked Naruto. Ah? What? No. Kurama looked at Naruto's clueless face, wondering how Minato and Kushina's son could be so dense sometimes. Kurama, don't worry about that. Help me deal with these puppets quickly. Naruto looked around and was anxious to fight. Dummy, these puppets are linked to the Rimyaku. As long as it's there, they will keep being regenerated no matter how many times you shatter them. What should I do? Asked Naruto with a grin. You can only argue, what? How is this possible? Kurama was shocked as he saw a yellow flash, and blonde masked young man was in front of Naruto. Kurama. What happened? Naruto felt the Kyuubi's shock and asked quickly. Kurama didn't answer, but looked at Minato through Naruto's eyes. Hey, I'll take you away. There are too many puppets here. Said Minato. Who are you? Why? Naruto, don't argue, follow him. Kurama interrupted Naruto. Out of trust to the Kyuubi, the latter allowed Minato to take him along to where Ryo and the rest of them were. Kakashi glanced at Naruto, and he could not look away. It was because Naruto's tailed coat mode reminded him of Kushina. Even Shibi was looking at him in awe. As for Naruto, he was also shocked. What did he see? A young mother? Ryo saw the shock on Naruto's face as he saw Kushina. It looked like pure shock, with no excitement. Kushina also felt awkward as she was being stared at. Uncomfortable, she subconsciously leaned towards Minato. Hey, who are you? Why do you have a Konoha forehead protector on? As no one spoke, Ryo took the initiative and broke the silence. Naruto looked back at Ryo, completely stunned. Kurama inside was laughing out loud. After he had enough laughter, he said to Naruto, Naruto, if I'm not guessing wrong, the power of the Rimyaku has distorted the fabric of time and space, and brought us back to the past. The ones you are seeing are both Kushina and Ryo Yamanaka from the past. Naruto nodded as if he knew it. He was sure that the people he saw were the ones he knew. He took a deep breath and finally pulled out an answer, my name is Uzumaki Naruto. Uzumaku? You're an Uzumaki? But how come you're blonde? Hearing Naruto, Kushina asked excitedly. Mom, I don't know how to explain it. Let me tell you first about how I came here. Mo. Mom? Me. Kushina pointed at herself, and Naruto nodded. It was then Kushina's turn to be shocked and confused. After that, Naruto said that he came to Riran with his squad to chase Mukid, a missing nin who escaped to the Riran ruin. When the latter absorbed the fourth Hokage's seal, he liberated the power of the Ryumaku. The Ryumaku's power was too immense, swallowing up both Naruto and Mukid. And the rest was known to the group. Hold on. The current Hokage is the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, not the fourth as you mentioned. And Kushina-sensei is not married. Kakashi questioned Naruto's words. Kakashi-sensei, you still don't get it. Naruto muttered. Kakashi heard him and glanced at Hom. Ryo had his head down, pretending to think, then looked up as if he knew nothing about any of this. Minato looked at Kakashi and said, Kakashi, what he said should be true, because this person is from the future. The future? People in the future are so strong. Kakashi was confused. Enough with the future. You're really my son. Kushina got out of her daze and asked excitedly. Of course. I wouldn't be wrong about that after living with you for over a decade. Said Naruto, using the same unique way of talking his mother uses. Kushina heard his fashion of speaking and her eyes sparkled. This must be her son. She excitedly ran over to him, hugging him, pinching his cheeks, messing with his hair and laughing very excitedly. Hey Kushina Ne-san. Sorry to disrupt your moment, but can I ask your son a few questions? Ask Ryo. Being a ninja, who knows very well that tasks come before anything, Kushina let Naruto go and. Before anything, when did you come from? Year 62 after Konoha's inception. Second question, did you encounter your target here? No. Third question, when you were surrounded by puppets, did you use the tailed coat mode? Yes, just like you taught me. Ryo, enough. Knowing too much of the future cannot be good. Minato interrupted Naruto's questioning. Ryo stopped asking, as the information he obtained was enough. From Naruto's discussion with his mother, he knew that they have been living together. This meant that the events of the Kyuubi attack night had changed. Just as Ryo was filled with joy about this, his consciousness was suddenly blurred. When he was awake, he found himself before Kurama. "Kurama, what's wrong? Hey, compared to how you've become, you're cute now," said Kurama to Ryo. "You're Naruto's Kurama? How come you've become smaller?" asked Ryo. "You'll eventually know later. I have brought you in just to tell you something." Kurama didn't answer Ryo, but instead told him something about the Sanbai. Chapter 110, The Future. The Kyuubi within Naruto told Ryo about his deal with Sanbai. Ryo had always been thinking about the Sanbai himself, thinking that it would be his perfect baiju. Its capability of launching a large-scale water release, while providing Ryo with a lot of chakra, could be monumental for Ryo. "Kurama, why are you telling me this?" Ryo asked. "It's because of your will to protect Kushina. Now, you should seal this memory, in a way that allows it to pop up again when it's suitable." Kurama's consciousness then disappeared. Ryo, just like the Kyuubi asked, sealed his memory. This seal acted similarly to Shisui's Mangekyo, being triggered by an pre-programmed event to have the memory recalled. Ryo never saw the Sanbai, nor did he ever have a sense of its chakra. So he set the seal to be undone whenever he uses Ice Colossus. All of these events, despite their complexity, took only a very short time. Everyone was listening to Naruto. Besides Minato, no one noticed Ryo acting awkward. However, Minato thought that Ryo was just too concerned, and didn't think about his behavior too much. What he was most worried about was that Naruto could end up revealing too much of the future. Again, Kushina, asking him to reveal too much of the future is not good. If it wasn't for Kushina, Minato's previous words would have been enough to prevent everyone from continuing to ask. But Kushina didn't care about what he said, leaving him helpless. "What's the matter, Minato? When we leave Varan, we'll just seal all of these memories." In front of her persistence, Minato could only compromise. And curiosity is human nature, he also wanted to know a few things. "Naruto, so I'm your mom. Who's your father?" After many questions, Kushina finally asked about what Minato wanted to know. "He is my dad. He's exactly the same as the photo you put at home, and very similar to the fourth Hokage's sculpture." Naruto pointed at Minato bluntly. "Minato. Great. We'll get married, and have such a great son." Kushina was very happy hearing Naruto, and rushed over hugging her boyfriend. Minato was indeed fitting to be the fourth Hokage, not just for his strength, but also for his wisdom and character. From Naruto's previous words, it seemed that while Kushina will be raising Naruto, Minato didn't seem to be in the picture. Mentioning his photo, Naruto affirmed Minato's speculation, and he realized that was to sacrifice his life in future mission. Thinking about that, Minato's face was gloomy. Anyone who knows that's going to die in the future, and not be able to accompany his wife and children would feel really downhearted. Ryo understood Naruto's words, and noticed Minato's dim eyes. "Minato-Nisan, I will not let this happen." Being consoled by Ryo made Minato smile and laugh a little. While everyone was chatting, Ryo sensed someone approaching in his perception range. "Quite. Someone is coming." Ryo's words interrupted everyone's conversation, and they all got on guard. A figure outside the door walked in carefully. "Minato-ni-san, you should handle him," said Ryo to Minato on his side. As soon as Ryo finished his words, Minato disappeared. In a heartbeat, he put his flying thunder god kunai on the intruder's neck. That person was in cold sweat. He hadn't noticed anyone as he was walking. If it wasn't Minato that snuck up on him, his end would have been much different. The reason why Minato didn't injure him was because he saw Konoha's forehead protector on him. However, out of caution, he still put him into submission. "Are a Konoha ninja?" asked Minato. "Yes. Do you know Naruto Uzumaki?" That person was silent. His affection, his companions and the confidentiality of the task prevented him from disclosing any information. Keeping silent, the man thought that the blade going to pass through his throat. He prepared himself for the sacrifice, and closed his eyes waiting for death. But after a while, he heard Naruto, "Captain Yamato, they are all companions, don't worry." Naruto. Hearing Naruto's voice and opening his eyes, he was stunned by the people he found around him. "Yamanaka-sensei. How are you? And this, what's going on?" Yamato first noticed Ryo. Then he noticed Minato. "Minato-sama. Weren't you out on a special mission? How is this possible?" Hearing Yamato's words, Minato's eyes shined. If he heard right, he shouldn't be dead, he was just out on that task. Immediately, he thought of what Naruto was saying, and while still had his complaints, those had replaced his feeling of sorrow, and he finally started feeling at ease. Ryo, don't keep him lost like this, explain the matter to him, said Minato. Ryo nodded and explained things to Yamato. Saying that, he felt that Yamato was treating him like his elder, treating him with respect and hint of fear. This made Ryo confused. Thank you, Yamanaka-sensei. I understand. I didn't expect the Ryamayaku to have such an effect, said Yamato. Ryo nodded and turned his attention to other matters. But Yamato's face was still concerned. Well, sorry Yamanaka-sensei, but can you return us to our time? Yamato couldn't help but ask. Ah. Well, you came here because Mukid completely absorbed the Ryamayaku seal. If you manage to defeat him and seal back the Ryamayaku, you should be able to return to your time, said Ryo. Thank you, Yamanaka-sensei. After getting an answer, the much older Yamato thanked him humbly. Ryo wasn't used to such treatment, and he stiffly nodded. The lot discussed their next move together. Naruto and Yamato should return to the future, and for that they should defeat Mukid. Mukid's identity in Raran was unknown to everyone but Ryo, but he had no way to explain the source of such information. After that, just like the manga, Minato suggested letting Naruto protect the Queen of Raran, and the others were to find Mukid. Kushina disagreed, and she felt that it was too dangerous for Naruto to go alone, so Minato agreed to let her accompany him. With this, everyone came to an agreement, and they started to act. Chapter 111, Closure. Things didn't develop differently from the movie. Naruto and Kushina protected Sarah, and Sarah realized that Anrokuzen was Naruto's target. With a series of incidents, she realized the minister's true face, and decided to help Naruto defeat him. On Minato's side, the others also located Anrokuzen with Shibi's abilities. When they arrived, they found that Naruto and Kushina had already joined forces to defeat their enemy. Anrokuzen made himself a giant body of a centipede with his puppet army and the Ryamayaku's powers. His true body however was hidden within, maneuvering his new form. Kushina and Naruto were mother and son, and their fighting styles were very similar, with both relying on their immense chakra to crush their opponents. But their joint attack was no good enough. Because Anrokuzen had absorbed the power of the Ryamayaku, he could regenerate indefinitely, and was not afraid of being hit by their attacks. Minato joining the two didn't have an effect as well. Shibi wanted to help, but he was stopped by Ryo. Shibi-san, this is a family fighting together. I think we outsiders shouldn't interfere. Shibi hesitated a bit then nodded. With Minato's presence, Kushina was more open to attack, and Anrokuzen's movement was somewhat restricted. With Kurama's power, Kushina was really destructive in her three-tailed coat mode. His puppets were quickly smashed by her brute strength, and his main body was exposed. Naruto and Minato together formed the Supreme Ultimate Raise Nan, and at the same time, Sarah closed the Ryamayaku. With that, Anrokuzen wasn't able to regenerate as before. The Supreme Ultimate Raise Nan hit his main body, destroying him completely. With that, Naruto was able to defeat Anrokuzen with the help of his parents. But that wasn't the last thing to see from this enemy. With his last breath, he made his body fall into the Ryamayaku, causing it to erupt. As in the movie, Minato had to seal the Ryamayaku immediately, which meant that the time had come. Kushina was reluctant to let go of her son after remaining with him for so long, and Naruto's eyes always stayed on Minato. After all, he had been with his mother his whole life, but his father was a missing figure throughout his childhood, with only a few pictures, and an engraving of him on the mountain remaining in his life. Feeling Naruto's gaze, Minato smiled at him, and then put his kunai through the floor, sealing the Ryamayaku. As the Ryamayaku was sealed, Naruto and Yamato's bodies started emitting light. They didn't belong to this time. Kushina and Naruto said their farewell, and Yamato took the opportunity to retaliate against the kid Kakashi who had bullied him, hitting him in the head. Why didn't you hit me? Kakashi raised his head and looked up to Yamato. Well, I've been always bullied by you, so there you go, said Yamato with satisfaction. Minato did not participate in this conversation, as he prepared to seal everyone's memories. Ryo wasn't worried, as he should only erase these memories, not the ones he previously sealed after talking to Kurama. The white light on Naruto was getting brighter, and he realized he was about to leave. He couldn't help but say something to Minato, but the latter interrupted him. It is my pride to have a son like you. We will have a chance to talk in the future. See you again. With his voice falling, Naruto and Yamato vanished. Author note: I did not focus on Sarah's emotional interaction with the characters, as these events are mainly a preparation for what's about to come. After Naruto and Yamato disappeared, the rest of them looked around puzzled, not knowing what was just happening. Minato sealed off all their memories of what happened in Roran, and all they remembered was entering the city. Kushina forgot everything leading to the incident, and looked up awkwardly. Minato, Ryo Kakashi, what are you doing here? Kushina, what are you doing here? Minato was shocked by her presence. She repeated the same explanation, and her promise to Ryo of returning to the village was obviously forgotten. Under the blend of Kushina's love and wrath, Minato could only agree to take her along with him to the Lightning Country battlefield, and at the same time, he decided to go the Konoha, in order to report to the Hokage. After looking around, Ryo saw Minato's seal, and immediately understood where he was. Minato also understood after seeing the seal that the task should be done with, and understood that memories involving any details about it were completely sealed. After Minato explained the situation, he apologized to everyone for sealing their memories. Of course, with none of them recalling anything, they had no complaints. With this, Roran's mission ended, and Minato sneaked out with his squad and returned to Konoha's camp with Flying Thunder God. No one noticed that Ryo had left a shadow clone behind. The purpose of him doing that was to check out the Ryamayaku's power. Soon after being sealed, Ryo sensed that the Ryamayaku still had some of its power still within some of the puppets outside. He didn't want anyone to know, so he secretly left his clone behind. When perceiving the Ryamayaku's power previously, Ryo noticed that it had a special chakra. While it was part natural energy, it was mainly closer to regular chakra. Still, it was somewhat similar to Senjutsu chakra. Anrakuzen, previously named Mukid, used this power to achieve a quick self-repairing effect. Ryo wanted to know whether Enrakuzen's method caused those effect, or whether the Ryamayaku itself had those properties. The clone had half of Ryo's chakra. Ryo's idea was trying to collect this energy from the puppets. If all goes smoothly, the clone could just travel to the Lightning Country. Otherwise, it would just go to Sakumo's camp, as it was the closest to Roran. Things went unexpectedly smooth. With Enrakuzen's death, the puppets were inanimate. It was easy for Ryo's clone to collect the Ryamayaku's energy from the puppets and seal it within a scroll, and then go directly to the Lightning Country camp. After Minato returned to the camp, he asked Ryo to arrange a residence for Kushina, while he used Flying Thunder God to go to Konoha and report to the third. Chapter 112, From a Grey Magpie to a Silver Falcon. Ryo's clone was gone 3 days later, when reaching Konoha's camp. Ryo received the scroll with the Ryamayaku's chakra and couldn't wait to start his research. After a clone disappears, its memories return to the main body. From these memories, Ryo realized that the amount of chakra sealed within the scroll was small compared to that within the Ryamayaku itself. It was about 2 to 3 times as much as the chakra of a regular cage. Ryo undid the seal on the scroll and extracted a small amount of the Ryamayaku's chakra. Like he had observed before, it was made out of a special chakra and some natural energy. Ryo then tried to inject the Ryamayaku's chakra into a dying bird. After the bird absorbed the chakra, its injuries gradually healed, but it was still half dead. Ryo used more of the Ryamayaku's chakra, injecting it into the bird. Then he opened his Sharingan and watched its flow within the bird's body. With the Sharingan, Ryo discovered that the Ryamayaku's chakra was circulating within the bird's body. However, the bird did not show any signs of life. Over the following few days, Ryo conducted the same experiments on various animals. Every time, he reached the same result. His research hit a wall. The Ryamayaku's chakra did indeed have the quick healing effect that Ryo expected. But if it could only heal and not stop death, then it is what he was looking for. To put it simply, the dying animals were being saved, on the surface, but they remained in a vegetative state. This disappointed Ryo, who was expecting a bit more than just fast healing. He was about to give and throw the corpses out, when he passed by the bird that was his first subject, and its wings actually fluttered. Then, the bird's eyes opened, and it looked around in confusion. When it saw Ryo, it was scared, flapped its wings and wanted to escape. Of course, Ryo wasn't letting the bird fly away anytime soon. He used a ribbon of lightning chakra to catch the bird and constrict its movements, and let his mind enter its body. The bird's body showed no change, but the Ryo-Myako's chakra disappeared. Then, Ryo confirmed said chakra's presence within every part of the bird's body, which meant that it was completely assimilated by the small animal. Ryo's mind withdrew from the bird's body and used healing to save it. After being healed, the bird didn't try to escape, just shrinking back and looking a little scared. With that, Ryo came to a realization: this bird is learning rather quickly. How can a bird be so smart? So he conducted various tests on it. With them, he determined that the bird had a higher IQ than large mammals. The bird was an ordinary grey magpie, the kind one could spot all over the world Ryo was in. A grey magpie's IQ should be lower than that of lizard, let alone large mammals. Usually, grey magpies are creature of instinct that shouldn't have such IQ. Ryo was also sure that this wasn't a summoned animal. With that possibility omitted, the bird's IQ could only be the result of its exposure to the Ryo-Myako's chakra. Ryo was extremely excited, looking forward to the changes that should occur to the other animals. In a few days, however, Ryo's excitement was toned down. Ryo actually conducted experiments on a total of 5 animals, including the magpie. But eventually, only the grey magpies and a hare survived, with the later's IQ not changing. After going out to throw the other dead animals, Ryo examined the hare. Unlike the magpie, it didn't have the Ryo-Myako's chakra left within its body, making it nothing different from an ordinary hare. After he released the animal, Ryo continued to conduct research on other dying animals. Like before, he injected the Ryo-Myako's chakra within their body. However, this time, he made sure that the amount of chakra used is proportional to their body mass. Kushina, very curious about Ryo, went out of his way to find dying animals, but she was held off of him by Minato. Minato thought that Ryo was working on a medical ninjutsu. Before him, Tsunade also often looked for animals for her research. And looking at Ryo, Minato saw that it looked as if he was on the verge of making a breakthrough. Of course, he didn't want Kushina to interfere with that. However, Kushina wasn't the type to listen to persuasion, and the more Minato insisted on keeping her from going in, the more curious she was. Ryo was her treasured apprentice, so why shouldn't she see him? With that in mind, Kushina snuck into Ryo's tent as he was struggling with the grey magpie. After absorbing the Ryo-Myako's chakra, the magpie's IQ shot through the roof, and Ryo discovered that it could refine chakra, a propriety that's usually unique to summoned beasts. This ability made Ryo more interested in this grey magpie. The changes occurring to the bird were not limited to that. Its body slowly grew, its beak and claws changed shape, it became more aggressive, and all the feathers on its body began to fall off and grow again, silvery white this time. In a few days, it turned into a bird that's 2 meters long wing to wing, looking more like a falcon than a magpie. Translator note: 2 meters equals 6 feet 6.7 inches. The main cause behind these transformations was the Ryo-Myako's power. A few days ago, the grey magpie found Ryo experimenting with other animals, and it kept pleading, as if it wanted more of it. At first, Ryo was reluctant, but when it found that the bird could refine chakra, he stopped hesitating. Over the following few days, he injected the bird with nearly a third of what he had in the scroll. This helped the bird complete its transformation, and the grey magpie turned into an incredibly intelligent silver falcon. So Ryo decided to try and teach it speech. It was at that moment that Kushina snuck in. She stood there surprised watching Ryo try to talk to a silvery white bird. "Ryo, what are you doing?" Kushina's voice startled Ryo, as he was too immersed in teaching the bird speech. Ryo was preparing to explain, when he heard the bird, "Ryo, what are you doing?" The magpie's voice was feminine, crisp, and very pleasing. The words were clear, as if it had been talking for so long. "Ryo, what's that summoned beast?" Kushina asked with some surprise. "Ryo, what's that summoned beast?" The magpie continued to imitate Kushina. Kushina found it to be interesting, that the bird in Ryo's tent was able to imitate her speech. Chapter 113, Kajin's Ninjutsu. Ryo is an idiot. Ryo is an idiot. That's enough, Kushina-ne-san. Ryo said helplessly, as Kushina started teaching the bird, mocking him as soon as she discovered it could replicate her words. "What's wrong? When I say the next sentence, it will forget this one." Kushina didn't care much. Ryo is an idiot. As soon as Kushina finished her words, the silver falcon responded. It kept repeating the sentence as it was smart enough to remember it. Cough. "Ryo, that's just an accident, believe me." Kushina's face turned red and she was embarrassed. "Ryo is an idiot. Ryo is an idiot." When the falcon repeated, Kushina got even more embarrassed, took the falcon and ran away. Ryo shook his head, not caring about the two. He had no reason to fear for the falcon, and what he really needed to do was to study the relationship between the Ryo-Myaku's power and intelligence. Over the following few days, the animal he previously injected with the Ryo-Myaku's chakra started waking up, and the experiment was a great success. Injecting the animals with amounts of Ryo-Myaku chakra that are proportional to their physics saved them. However, just like the hare, none of the animals' IQs changed. With this, Ryo had a general understanding of the characteristics of this power. This chakra can quickly heal wounds, but it takes it time to restore life functions. Not only that, it takes less to heal wounds than to restore life. With this, Ryo was very satisfied, and felt great about it having such an effect. The falcon, taken away by Kushina, flew back every night to Ryo's tent. For the first 2 nights, it kept repeating, "Ryo is an idiot." However, after that, it started communicating on a basic level, and improving over time. This bird had a human-like intelligence and acquired the ability to communicate with humans normally. With that, she could already be Ryo's companion. So, he wanted to give her a name. Ryo's naming capabilities were actually inferior to those of Minato. While the later overcomplicated names to the extreme, Ryo was always blunt and went straight to the first name to pop in his mind. Basing on the naming style of things he used to watch as a kid, he named it, Kajin. Translator note, Kajin is Japanese for little silver. The falcon, hearing Ryo giving her a name, was very excited. She didn't really recognize whether the name was good or bad, and she flew back and forth across the room. After confirming the name, Kajin continued to learn human language with Kushina. However, Ryo had to stop studying the Ryo-Myaku's power because of a request from Minato. The day after naming the falcon, Minato summoned him, and asked him to make an abundance of healing stones. After 4 years, the stock made by Ryo was already exhausted. In Konoha, only Ryo and Jiraiya could make such stones, but both of them were indispensable on the battlefield. On all fronts, Konohas had been losing too many lives. This made Minato very anxious, and he only could think of healing stones as a way to limit casualties. Since it was a personal request from him, there was no chance that Ryo would refuse. So the latter put his Ryo-Myaku research to the side momentarily to focus on this task. With his improvement over the years in both chakra control and Fuinjutsu, Ryo found that he could make 80 stones per day. As before, the stones were for ninjas who were Chunins or above. Ryo managed to make 810 stones, in just 10 days. This was enough to give stones to all ninjas who were Chunin or above in the camp. Ryo gave 800 to Minato, and kept himself an emergency stock of 10 stones. Over the course of those 10 days, Ryo didn't have rest, and his research the Ryo-Myaku had to be put on hold. Of course, he had no time to deal with Kajin, which was spending its time with Kushina. So Ryo went to Kushina's tent, after many phases of not seeing each other. Kushina however wasn't there. Ryo entered Sage mode and localized her in the camp. After finding her and Kajin, Ryo rushed to the direction of the two. At the time, Kushina was teaching Kajin on chakra control. After a few days of getting along, Kushina discovered that Kajin, while having chakra, could not use it. Being a bird, Kajin could not learn making seal, so Kushina went for teaching her direct applications of chakra use. There are many ways to use chakra directly. Walking on tree, or even on water, medical ninjutsu, or even the mighty Raise Nan, there were all jutsus that didn't require forming any seals. Kajin was more sensitive to chakra than an average summoned beast, and it quickly assimilated Kushina's teaching. After learning to use chakra, it was ready to use her own unique attack. It was just like Manda's poison, Katsuyu's acid saliva, Kajin had its own specialty. It was wind release. By learning to use chakra, Kajin became capable of creating wind blades by flapping its wings, ones less potent than an average B-grade jutsu. As Ryo arrived, he happened to witness Kajin release over a dozen wind blades in succession, leaving multiple marks on a large stone. "Kajin! You are doing great!" Kushina encouraged it. "Ne-san, you said this ability is wind blade. Do I have other powers?" Ryo was listening to Kajin talking so smoothly and being able to learn how to release ninjutsu. "I don't know about that. Do you want to test your chakra affinity?" Saying that, Kushina looked around her luggage for a strip of chakra induction paper. After searching for a while, she found nothing. Ryo sent an ice scalpel, teleporting to it and handing Kushina a strand of chakra induction paper. Kushina noticed it was Ryo who came in a blink of an eye. Kajin was paying attention to Kushina. She didn't notice Ryo until he stood there in front of the two. She waved her wings and flew around him with excitement, landing slowly on his shoulder. Kajin, long time no see. Ryo greeted her. Kajin however looked away, ignoring Ryo's salute and saying, I don't talk with people who ignore Kajin. Ryo smiled. The little bird was still angry because Ryo left her. He offered her Ryamayaku Chakra however, and she immediately forgave him. Chapter 114, Emergency. Ryo, Kajin injected her chakra within the paper. It wrinkled then was cut in two halves. Wind and lightning? Really suitable for a bird, said Kushina. Ryo also nodded. Indeed, wind and lightning were suitable for birds. They are really useful in mid-air, and non-reliant on solid grounds. Moreover, lightning can stimulate cellular activity and induce increased speed. For birds, faster flight should prove to be very important. Ryo even thought of teaching Kajin how to use the lightning chakra mode. Ryo, Ne-san, does this mean that I can learn jutsus other than wind blades? Kajin asked with some excitement. Yes, there are many techniques you should be able to learn. Ryo answered with a smile. After knowing what affinities Kajin had, Ryo and Kushina began teaching her wind and lightning nature transformation. Her main talent was with wind transformation, and she was learning wind release jutsus at a much faster rate than lightning release jutsus. Because of her inability to form hand seals, Kajin could only use wind blades or make tornadoes. That's basically all she could do with her talent in wind release at that time. When it came to lightning release, Ryo finally decided to teach her the lightning chakra mode. It was suitable for her, it wasn't a technique that relied on seals, a seal-less jutsu. On top of that, it should be very helpful for her, as it could improve Kajin's defense and speed immensely. However, things were not going well for her practicing this mode. This was mainly due to the fact that it was a technique devised for the human body, not for birds. Several times, Kajin was able to stimulate her cellular activity and gain speed, but that was in way close to the level acquired when using the lightning chakra mode. On one day, Ryo and Kushina were training Kajin, when Mon Uchiha barged in dripping in sweat. Ryo saw his state and knew that something big had happened. Seeing Ryo, he directly said, Ryo, something happened. Remember that family of 3 that helped us get to the wave country? We just found out that their daughter had been kidnapped by the hidden cloud. What? Only then, Ryo remembered Uzumaki Shinshiro's family. He forgot to tell Kushina about them, and did not expect Kotori to be kidnapped by the hidden cloud. What the hell happened? Make it clear. Ryo was anxious. This is how it went. The family of 3 boarded a ship to purchase some goods from the lightning country. They managed to do that, but the cloud ninjas discovered that Shinshiro was a ninja. Shinshiro-san fought bravely to protect his family and was seriously injured, and his wife came to our camp asking us for help in saving their daughter. Listening to the matter, Ryo left Kajin and immediately headed to find Minato. Minato also received the news and was discussing measures that should be taken to save Kotori. As soon as Ryo entered the tent, he telepathically communicated with Minato. Minato-Nisan, Shinshiro-san is practically Kushina's older brother, making Kotori her niece. If she's not saved... Minato's feelings changed greatly. The Uzumaki clan had been allies of Konoha for a long time, and this incident is concerning some of Kushina's loved ones. Ryo, does Kushina know? No, she doesn't. Minato was relieved, as he doesn't have to deal with restraining Kushina. Ryo, you go behind the kidnappers with Shibi. With his help, you should find them quickly. If you find that the enemy is too much for you to handle on your own, send me a message through the toads of Mount Miyabuku. I'll be there with you in no time, said Minato. Good. Even without Minato's proposal, that was what Ryo would do. Not paying attention to anyone else in the camp, after Ryo finished talking with Minato, he directly headed towards Shibuya-Barame, and the two left the camp. On their way, Ryo explained the incident to Shibi. The latter immediately sent out his insects to trace the Uzumaki girl and the lightning ninjas. The waves of bugs swarmed the area, but they weren't finding any clues. Ryo could only wait. After about 10 minutes, Shibi finally got a clue. He determined the enemy's current position. They were 10 kilometers to the east of Konoha's camp. Ryo entered the Ice Lightning Chakra mode, using his ice scalpels to teleport. After about 10 minutes, Ryo estimated that he was in range of his target 0. His entered Sage mode and detected the enemy not too far away. They had over 20 people, including a Hokage, a Jonin, and 3 Takubitsu Jonins. Kotori was unconscious on the shoulder of one of the Jonin as they were running towards their village. Ryo directly chased them, and actually passed by them to intercept them in the woods. Haha! Are Konoha's ninjas all cowardly? Just one? I was expecting much more. Seeing just Ryo, the Hokage laughed. His words made his whole team laugh their hearts off. Seeing the young teenager who came, they thought that he only came to die. Ryo wasn't in the mood to talk nonsense. He took out 2 ice scalpels, held one in his hand while leaving the other behind. His ice lightning chakra mode broke out, and all the enemies saw was a spark of lightning, before the laughter of the Jonin that was with them ended abruptly, and red started gushing out of his neck. Ryo was already back in his place, with Kotori in his arms. The lightning ninjas just saw a flash, and before they realized anything, Ryo had already saved Kotori. They all stopped laughing, including the Hokage leading them. This was a Jonin, who was killed in a heartbeat. The Hokage was on full alert as he stared at Ryo. Ryo confirmed that Kotori was unscathed and that she was just shocked into unconsciousness by the kidnapping. He was relieved, placed near a tree, and planted an ice scalpel by her side. Who are you? A Hokage from Konoha. Ryo ignored the Hokage once again, he had no habit of chatting with the dead. The Hokage was angered by Ryo's attitude. He entered the lightning chakra mode and rushed in. For the first time, Ryo was able to see the cloud's lightning chakra mode. He looked at his foe with great interest. Oh! So arrogant! Seeing that Ryo wasn't about to hide, the Hokage was more and more angry, and his lightning chakra mode go more powerful and violent as his fist hit Ryo. Ryo smiled, as he lightning flickered away from the punch, and then attacked with the 1,000 flying ice needles of death. However, his attack did not penetrate beyond the lightning chakra mode's armor. Still, the armor was deeply dented. Ryo grinned with disappointment, and he flickered in front of his enemy. The ice scalpel in his left broke through the armor, while his right punched through that gap, reaching the Hokage's abdomen. The man in front of him fainted from the impact. Ryo wasn't about to stop. As lightning flickered all over the place, corpses of the cloud ninjas were falling. Both he and Minato were speed-type ninjas, both relied on their incredible speed to win. Strong foes fell in instants before them. If it was Minato here, these enemies would only fall faster. In the end, Ryo froze the Hokage, took Kotori, and returned to Konoha's camp. Chapter 115, The Cloud's Plot. Right as Ryo was coming back, he met Kushina, who was rushing out of Konoha's camp. From her state, he realized that the matter had been exposed. On behind her, Uchiha was hurrying to hide behind a crowd. Ryo gazed at him fiercely. If he hadn't saved little Kotori already, he wouldn't let him get away with it. Mon was actually filled with regrets. He had no idea about the relationship between Kushina and the family, as he never talked to them while on the sailboat. After all he knew was that Kushina had a red hair family. Who knew that when mentioning that the kid who was kidnapped had red hair, Kushina would become concerned for her family? Ryo. Is Kotori okay? Kushina rushed over and held Kotori. Don't worry Ne-san, she just fainted from the shock. We better let her wake up on her own as she should be pretty afraid. Good. Hearing Ryo, Kushina couldn't help but sigh of relief. But immediately, her hair floated again, and she was burning with anger. Ne-san, calm down. Please calm down. Did you take care of those cloud ninjas? Asked Kushina in a cold tone. It was the first time Ryo heard her speak in such a tone. Saying that she was angry is an understatement. After all, Shinshiro's family are actually her only remaining relatives in the world. It's natural that she would be so furious and worried. Of course. There's only this guy left, to squeeze the info out of him. Ryo quickly explained. Kushina nodded, holding Kotori, and then headed towards the medical ninja's tent. Fortunately, I was back in time, otherwise, we might have had problems with Kushina Ne-san. Ryo, you don't know that she went and released 6 tails. Mon said weakly, then pointed at the scorched land outside the west side of the camp. 6 tails. Ryo looked to where Mon pointed, and he was shocked. What used to be a forest in that side was all gone, and all that was left behind was devastation. Ryo shook his head helplessly, then went to Minato's tent. Minato-san, do we know where Kushina's niece was? A Jonin was asked. Don't worry about it anymore, Kushina and Isan had picked her up. Hearing Ryo, everybody in the tent, including Minato, were relieved. None of them was able to wrap their minds around the immense power that the Six Tails mode brought to Kushina. It was actually Kushina's unwillingness to hurt the innocent that made her point her Bijutama away, destroying the forest on the camp's west. Otherwise, half the camp would have been blown up. Everyone, Kotori had been saved, and Kushina and Isan is fine. Now, we need to discuss how to handle this guy. Saying that, Ryo revealed to them the frozen cloud ninja behind him. This man is the captain of the squad that made the kidnapping. He's a Quasi-Kage. I think we should be able to get some valuable information out of him. Quasi-Kage. Minato didn't expect Ryo to bring back such a surprise. Someone at that level should be a prominent figure in their village, and the info taken from a Quasi-Kage can even flip the balance of power between camps. Ryo, the matter of getting intelligence is still yours, said Minato. Of course, nobody was to object, as none of them doubted the Yamanaka's ability when it comes to reading minds, just as they trust the Abermaze insects or the Hyaga's eyes. Ryo pressed his hand against the cloud ninja's head. His consciousness entered his mind, and he began reading his memories. A person's memory is vast, and one could not find to read it all. Ryo directly went to what seemed most prominent to the cloud ninja himself. He learned that this man was named Troy, a disciple of the Third Hokage. He was just on patrol, and didn't expect to encounter Uzumaki clan members. The cloud ninjas had long coveted the Uzumaki clan. Before, they were the ones to infiltrate Konoha, trying to kidnap Kushina as she was young. Now, finding such an opportunity, they weren't about to let go of it. So Troy and his team fought Shinshiro. After beating him and taking away Kotori, Troy was not satisfied with his victory. He deliberately let Shinshiro and his wife go to Konoha's camp for help. He was very confident, and had an idea about Konoha's ranks. If the one to come after him was to be Minato, he would have run away. If another one was to come, he would have been delighted and confident enough to face them. He never thought of the possibility of Konoha's camp having another Kage tier, and that led to his demise. Later, Ryo continued going through his memories searching for valuable ones. Most of Tello's important memories were related to the Third Hokage. Two of them had great value. One of them was the fight between the Third and the Hakubi, and the other was a meeting in the Cloud Camp. Through Trio's memories, Ryo witnessed the immense power of the Third Hokage. If the Yanbai was that much stronger than the Ichibai, one could only imagine how strong the Hakubi is. However, the Third Hokage was able to single-handedly deal with this horrible existence. From Troy's memories, the Third was actually overpowering the Hakubi. If it wasn't for the beast's practically infinite reserves of chakra, he would have been actually able to kill it. Later, the battle got too fierce, and the cloud ninjas were hiding in the distance. Like Ryo knew from the manga, the Hakubi was restrained, and the Third was also seriously injured. Because everyone besides Ryo thinks that the Third Hokage's wound was inflicted by the Hakubi, Troy thought so as well. He found that the Third seeing the scar of that wound as his shame a bit peculiar. The other memory was the meeting. It was a recent meeting with all the high-end ninjas of the Hidden Cloud. The Third, AI, Killer Bee, and Yujitone were all Kage tiers. Even though she was physically weaker than the rest of them, but just like Bee, she was a perfect Jinchuriki, and she's Kage tier when using that power. The meeting didn't decide much, but the news within it were shocking. First, the Rain Village joined forces with the Hidden Cloud, and Hanzo the Salamander was coming. The second was that the Third Hokage's first target was the Hidden Rock. Ryo informed the people in the meeting about what he got. Their faces were heavy when hearing Hanzo's name. Hanzo the Salamander, it was the name of a legend. He was considered a half-god by many, and he was certainly one of the strongest Kages. With his presence, this war is only about to get more complicated. Chapter 116, Ryo's Plot. Hands of the Salamander, was legendary during the Sui period, and his achievements in battle were enough to make him hailed as a demigod. That was how strong this man was. That is how the people in the meeting regarded him, but not Ryo. Only Ryo thought that Hanzo's actual feats did not match his reputation. He was easily killed by Pain 6. And then, when reincarnated with Edo Tensei by Kabuto, he showed no feats before being sealed. The only feat Ryo could think of was beating the Sunin, but that was long before this battle. Ryo even thought that Sage Mode should be enough to overpower Hanzo. Ryo's thoughts were unknown to others, and they were all worrying about the Cloud's new ally. Minato-san, this new alliance is formed against the Hidden Rock. Why should we worry about it? Can't we just take advantage of the weakening of the two sides after battle? The Hyuga clan head spoke. Usually, this was where the Uchiha's clan head interfered going against the Hyuga. However, for once, he actually agreed with what his counterpart had to say. No, you have to put into perspective the gap in power between the rock and the cloud. The only cage tier ninjas that the rock have are Oniki and the Gobijin Churiki. Also, when it comes to regular ninjas, the rock should be outnumbered. If we just sit and ignore what's going on, it's very likely that the rock would be taken down in one fell swoop. When that happens, we'll surely be the ones to follow. Minato's words made everyone silent. What he said was indeed the truth. Once the balance between camps is broken, it's bound to cause massive repercussion. In the Cloud Camp there are already 4 cage tier ninjas. Adding Hanzo to them, who is top cage tier, makes 5. Such high-end combat power is enough to match that of both Konoha's and the Rock's camps. On top of that, the third Hokage and Hanzo were in a league of their own, even compared to most cage tier ninjas. You're all worried about Hanzo. So, it should be good if he doesn't join the hidden cloud. Just as everyone were thinking about a solution, Ryo spoke out. Yeah, easy for you to say. But it's Hanzo of the Salamander, is there even a way to stop him? Said the Uchiha's clan head. Of course. Separating them from each other, and then killing him on his own. Haha, killing him on his own? Who do you think you are? Don't think you can do whatever you want just because you're cage tier. The Uchiha clan's head mocked Ryo. Ryo ignored him, and turned to Minato. Minato ni-san, leave Hanzo of the Salamander to me. I have a way to keep him off this battlefield. Minato knew Ryo well. If the latter is making such a statement, then is sure to have an ace up his sleeve. However, the gap in power was too great, and Minato was too skeptical to agree with Ryo's proposal. Hanzo is the leader of the Rain Village. The reason why he's helping the Cloud should be nothing more but a promise made to him by the third Hokage, one that should benefit his village. But if trouble occurs within the Rain Village, do you think Hanzo would come? Ryo said his thoughts, and the others in the tent looked at each other and thought of his suggestion. Ryo-san, we understand what you mean. But I believe it's impossible to cause civil strife in the Rain Village. As far as I know, the villagers there regard Hanzo as their savior, and the whole village is loyal to him. I'm afraid your proposal is, the Nara clan's representative stood up and said. That's in the past. Haven't you heard of the Akatsuki? Asked Ryo. Akatsuki? The organization near the Rain Village. Minato knew about them back when he returned to the village some time ago. The third mentioned this emerging organization. Others didn't know about it, but Minato knowing is enough. Ryo was very close to make his point. The Rain Village is located at the junction of the Earth, Wind, and Fire countries. Their battlefield are located all around it. While this current war didn't reach their village, ninjas often pass by it. What Ryo said was knowing to all those present, so they were all a little confused. Minato nodded to Ryo telling him to go on. As far as I know, the Akatsuki has been founded by 3 war orphans. Their purpose is peace. The participation of Hanzo in this war is certainly against their ideals. However, this organization is also a very strong one in the Rain Village. This requires us to promise some things. Promise what? The Uchiha's head couldn't wait to ask, as Ryo's idea started to look more and more feasible. He forgot how just moments ago, he was mocking him. Ryo didn't pay attention to him, he gulped then said, what we need to give the Akatsuki is a promise that Konoha and the Hidden Rock shall not step into the Rain country. I can negotiate with the Hokage-sama about Konoha, but the Rock, Minato's face was a little concerned, as the Rock should give them a hard time if they try to convince them of making such a commitment. Minato ni-san, don't forget that we still have Troy. We just need to hand him over to Oniki, and he'll be more anxious than us. After all, the Rock are the first target of this alliance. Ryo said with a smile. Minato nodded, the rush of actual events made him forget such a fact. After that, the meeting discussed further specific details. They waited until the evening, then Minato took Troy to the vicinity of the rock camp with his flying thunder god. Just like planned, Minato used some water to wake Troy up, and then immediately left with flying thunder god. Troy's mind was still caught up in his battle against Ryo, because he was stunned too fast for him to perceive. As soon as he woke up, his lightning chakra mode broke out. He shined like a 1000-watt light bulb, immediately illuminating the night. The rock ninjas easily found out about him, and immediately sent 2 ninjas to inspect. Troy was somewhat confused when finding out that Ryo had disappeared, and casually killed the 2 rock ninjas. With that, it was as if he poked a honeycomb, and the rock ninjas swarmed up around him. In the end, the Gobi Jinchuriki himself arrived and caught him. Like Troy, the rock were confused, but it was a good thing to catch an enemy's Hokage. Ananki personally came to interrogate him. Troy was mentally strong, and they got nothing out of him the whole night. This made Onaki anxious. He even wanted to kill him, as he felt the interrogation was a waste of time. But in the end, he did not do that, as he knew that the information that he could get out of him is too valuable. A day later, the rock finally got Troy to speak using genjutsu. Getting the information out of him, the faces of all the higher-ups of the camp turned blue. Chapter 117, Sneaking into the Rain Country. The rock and the cloud had always been hostile to each other. While the cloud's war against Konoha was purely for resources, theirs against the rock was because of the hatred that was always there. Onaki was very aware of this. If the cloud did really ask Hanzo for help, then their first target will definitely be them. Hanzo's name made Onaki extremely afraid. In his view, the most powerful living ninjas of the time were him, Hanzo, the 3rd Hokage and 3rd Raikage. If it was only the 3rd Raikage facing him, Onaki would be confident that he wouldn't lose. However, he knew that he should not be able to face the 2 together. Moreover, if Hanzo of the Salamander actually comes to this battlefield, the cloud would have 5 Kage tier ninjas. The rock did have 4 Kage tier ninjas, but Rashi was killed. The sand front also needs Kitsuke for its leadership. For now, this front only has Onaki and Han, the Gobi Jinchuriki. Old man, this situation is very unfavorable to us. What are you going to do? Asked Han. There are only 2 ways for us to take. One is to retreat before Hanzo's arrival, and the other is to join forces with Konoha to resist this alliance. Join forces with Konoha? Tsuchikage-sama, will Konoha be willing to cooperate with us? Said Gari. If Hanzo really arrives, we'll be all in the same boat. Once we're defeated, Konoha should be next. I believe they'll understand this much. Said Onaki after some silence. In that case, how do we deliver this information to Konoha? If we just tell them, they might just not believe it. Han, you're going to throw this cloud Hokage to Konoha's camp. They have the Yamanaka clan, and they should have someone to read his memories and thoughts. While they may not believe what we say, they should believe what they see. Han nodded and ran towards Konoha's camp with the cloud captive. Onaki sighed. He knew that by asked for Konoha help, he is going to pay. After all, while Hanzo's arrival is a major threat to them as well, this new alliance should have the rock as its first target. What should Konoha be interested in? After Han took the half-dead Troy to Konoha's camp to explain his intentions, Minato told him to leave the Hokage to them. As soon as he did that, Han ran into the distance without looking back. Witnessing the horrifying golden flash, he knew that he should be no opponent of him, even with the power of the Gobi. After Han left, Minato once again summoned the higher-ups of the camp to a meeting in his tent. Seeing the beat-up Troy, everyone knew that Ryo's plan was a success. The next step is negotiation. With this, we are giving the rock great help. I believe it's appropriate to ask for something back. Minato wasn't just fit to be a Hokage for his strength, his political wisdom was also on par. Minato-san, Konoha's repertoire of earth-release jutsus is lacking. Said Kataki Uchiha. As soon as his voice fell, the tent was full of excitement. The old man, and the head of his clan, knew well what to ask for. The next day, Minato went with the result of his discussions to negotiate with Onaki. Konoha demanded an S-class jutsu, 5A-class jutsu, and supplies that were ending in their camp. Negotiations naturally didn't go well. Onaki just couldn't give away an S-class jutsu. The most important thing in such situations is to stay calm. After the negotiations' failure, Minato just retreated, and the rock didn't hear from Konoha's camp for days. With time passing by, and his sensor ninjas detecting cloud ninjas going in the way of the rain country, Onaki couldn't help it anymore. He took the initiative and contacted Minato for second negotiations, and finally they reached an agreement, an S-class jutsu, 3A-class jutsus, and rock not stepping foot into the rain country. After the completion of the negotiations, Minato personally intercepted the ninjas going from the cloud village to the rain country. After that, he returned to Konoha's camp. He immediately took Ryo with the flying thunder god to the wind country, through which the latter entered the rain country. The rain country was just like depicted in the manga, a small country where it rained all the time. Because of the fact that it was a main battlefield during the Second Shinobi World War, the country's boundaries were very strictly guarded. The country's hidden village was the village hidden in the rain. Their ninjas have developed several secret techniques. Because of that, they were great when it came to assassinations, hence that's what they've been mostly hired to do. Ryo's knowledge of the country from the manga was from the Pain Rain era. As for the base of the Akatsuki, Ryo couldn't remember anything that guided him to their hiding place. The problem was that, whether it was the rain country or village, both were totally different from what Ryo remembered. The Akatsuki's base should be outside of the village. And that leaves Ryo with no clue for finding them. His only path was the use of the transformation jutsu, along with the use of chakra camouflage jutsu to look like an ordinary merchant, and then try to trace the Akatsuki through the rain village. Although the rain country was small one, it was still a whole country. Ryo was trying to find a needle in a haystack. Moreover, Ryo didn't know anything about any of the Akatsuki's chakras. Even with the use of the sage mode, he should not be able to find them. Finding nothing after a whole day of searching, Ryo was tired, and entered hotel nearby. In his past life, Ryo liked to drink a few cups when he had no work. Being a miner in Konoha all the time, he never got the chance to drink the Naruto-verse drinks. Most of what people drank here was pure sake, but it didn't matter to Ryo. He ordered a small bottle and started drinking. Next to him, were two drunk men talking. "Hey, did you hear? Hanzo-sama will negotiate with Yahiko-san from the organization tomorrow." The fat one of the two talked. "What are you talking about? How do you know?" The thin one responded. "I heard that it's a meeting about peace, and about the third counties of fire, earth, and wind. As for my knowledge of the matter, don't forget that my aunt's daughter-in-law's third brother is Hanzo Guard," said the fat man proudly. "Her brother? Where will the negotiations happen? Let's go together and watch." "No. Tomorrow's negotiations are for ninjas only. Do you want to die? And I only know that they will negotiate near the rain village, that's all." After that, the conversation between the two became less interesting, but Ryo was satisfied with the unexpected information. Sure enough, it's like they say, the best place to get information is hotels and brothels, said Ryo to himself. After drinking some sake, Ryo rushed to the rain village ahead of schedule. Entering the sage mode, he found a place with many ninjas in it. So he went ahead, killed one of them sneakily, and then mixed himself into them. Chapter 118, Facing Hanzo. The rain ninjas made an ambush in the heights around the meeting place, and Ryo was hidden with them, and he kept sensing the surroundings from time to time. At dawn, a familiar chakra entered the range of his perception. After he sensed said chakra, Ryo was sure that he had just got one of his best opportunities to gain Yahiko's trust. That chakra was that of the counselor, Danzo Shimura. Ryo was wondering why such a huge ambush was made, but then learned as he mixed up with the rain soldiers and overheard their conversations that the plan was to annihilate the Akatsuki and kill its members. Therefore, Ryo kept on perceiving the outside. When he sensed Danzo arriving, he knew that the meeting was close, and that the Akatsuki are about to arrive. The day was getting brighter, and the light rain in the village kept falling down. The day was peaceful, and it looked like nothing could interrupt said peace. In the early morning, Yahiko, Nagato, and Konan all came to the field with a dozen of their peers, and Hanzo was waiting for their arrival to their deaths. The three were not so much wary of Hanzo. To them, that man was a sincere protector of the rain village, and they were all still wearing their rain forward protectors. But they didn't know that Hanzo felt threatened by the growth of their organization, and he had long wanted to get rid of them. Now, with Danzo's secret support and incentives, he couldn't help but make his step against them. Ryo had always kept attention on Danzo, waiting for him to make his move. Sure enough, as the negotiations started, while the three were vigilant, Hanzo had his eyes set on Yahiko. Just as Hanzo was about to make his move, Ryo used ice scalpels that he had buried in advance, and teleported 3 times, to end up in Hanzo's way. The latter was startled by Ryo's sudden appearance. With his great experience, he knew that Ryo did not use a regular flicker, but instead he used something that's more akin to a space-time ninjutsu. Thinking about that, the first name that came to his mind was that of Minato, Konoha's yellow flash. But unlike Minato, this young man in front of him looked much younger, and had black hair. "Who are you?" Why are you interfering with the rain's internal matters? People with space-time ninjutsus are not easy to take down. Hanzo didn't want to fight if not necessary. Ryo ignored Hanzo, and shouted to Danzo who was hidden on higher grounds, Danzo-san. Since you're here, then I suppose I have nothing to do. Being found out by Ryo, Danzo had no more reason to hide, so he came out angrily. Hello. Danzo-san. Ryo Yamanaka, you should be on the Lightning Country's battlefield. What are you doing in the Rain Country? The crime of leaving your post is not a light one. Said Danzo. I also wanted to ask you Danzo-san about what you're doing here. Could it be that you're conspiring with the Rain Village to do something that might harm Konoha? Who was the one with something to fear? Ryo was not willing to show weakness, responding to Danzo's threats with direct accusations of endangering Konoha. No, those are unfounded claims. I came here under the command of the Hokage to help the Rain get rid of traitors. Would you look at that? Your mission seems to contradict with mine. I've received my orders from the Hokage to form an alliance with Yahiko, while delivering Konoha's and the Stone's promise to never get the Rain Country involved with any of our wars again. Hearing Ryo, Danzo stared at him in silence. Oh, I see you do not believe me yet. I have letters from both Oniki and the old man right here. Ryo took out 2 scrolls and handed them to the trio behind them. Yahiko took the scrolls, and upon reading them, he began shaking with excitement. Then he passed them over to Nagato and Konan, who were both full of joy reading them. What do Konoha and the Rock mean by this? Why interfere with the Rain internal affairs? Hearing Ryo, Hanzo asked. It was you who interfered first, accepting the Cloud's terms and intervening in our war. Ryo words drove Hanzo into momentary silence. He did not expect to be discovered so soon by Konoha and the Rock. Hanzo-sama, why intervene in the war between these great powers? We can no longer afford to have war affect the Rain Country. How can you ignore the life and death of the people? Yahiko said emotionally. You kids are so naive. No involvement in a war where great countries offer great benefits? How would the village develop? We need affiliation with larger countries. Said Hanzo angrily. You've gone mad for power. From this day on, we shall protect the peace of the Rain Country our own way. After Yahiko ended his words, the 3 turned to leave. You're not going anywhere. Hanzo was angry and frustrated, and ordered the surrounding ninjas making their ambushes to attack. You go, I'll keep them from pursuing you. The climate of the Rain Country made it an ice user paradise, and Ryo wasn't afraid of anyone of the battlefield. Thank you, but we are no fools. We've come prepared. But there one thing I would ask you, to bring these scrolls to our headquarters. Said Yahiko, handing the scrolls to Ryo, and rushing into combat. Observing the trio, Ryo found problems, they were too weak. Nagato was fighting at the level of a Jonin, while the other 2 were just Takubutsu Jonin tier. It didn't take them long before they fell under the siege of a large number of Rain ninjas. As they fell, something peculiar happened. Shape-shifting jutsu. Ryo didn't think that Nagato would be able to use this technique so early in his life, and was a little surprised. It was one of the Rinnegan's techniques. When activated, people other than the user can get the same appearance as the person designated by the user, getting all their jutsu, and 30% of their chakra. Danzo-san, shouldn't you leave now? I think the show is over. I'll be reporting to the Hokage, and you could do the same. Saying that, Ryo entered the Ice Lightning Chakra mode and left. Danzo puffed and also left, leaving behind a furious Danzo. After today's meeting, Ryo understood why Hanzo didn't join the Cloud's ranks in the manga. It must have been the consequence of Nagato's rampage. With everything now being clear, Ryo remembered that moment when Yahiko died. Now, with his interference, there's no reason for things to develop in that way. Watching the good show the trio put out, Ryo was eager to meet them again. He had to admit, Yahiko was a good leader. Chapter 119, Official Meeting. 2 days went by ever since Ryo first met the trio. In the Rain Country, a massive wide-scale search for the Akatsuki begun. 2 days ago, Yahiko returned the scroll to Ryo, and asked him to bring it back to the Akatsuki's camp. The only problem was that he never told Ryo about the camp's location. Ryo could only helplessly start looking for their location, for over 2 days. However, unlike the first time when he was searching blindly, Ryo now at least became familiar with Yahiko's chakra. After 2 days, he finally was able to locate him with the help of Sage Mode. While they were waiting for Ryo, Yahiko, Nagato, and Konan were also anxious. Yahiko forgot to tell Ryo about his location, and the other two thought that he had left him the information on the scroll, so they never reminded him of doing it. After returning, Yahiko could only ask if anyone left an address to Ryo, and he found out that he never got even a general direction. This was very embarrassing, and the trio feared that Ryo might never find them this way. However, they couldn't dare to send out people to look for him. With the announced clash between the Rain Village and the Akatsuki, sending people out is sending them to their death. The Akatsuki's camp was located deep in a mountain on the west side of the Rain country. After conferring that he wasn't followed, Ryo entered their base. At the outer gate, Nagato was constantly using Rainmaker Jutsu, and he confirmed Ryo's entrance. Learning that Ryo finally found their camp, the three were finally relieved. They each greeted Ryo, and took him into the cave. This was their first official meeting. "I'm sorry, I forget to give you the address to our camp." After the four sat down, Yahiko embarrassedly scratched his head. "Haha. No problem, looking for someone is one of my specialties," Ryo said with a smile. "First, I'll introduce myself. My name is Yahiko. This is Nagato, and this is Konan. Pleasure to meet you. My name is Ryo Yamanaka." After knowing each other, Ryo handed over the letters from the Hokage and the Tsuchikage to Yahiko. Although they've seen them before, the three were still pretty excited seeing the letters, and Ryo wasn't about to disrupt their happiness, as he admired the beauty of their feeling that their dreams can be achieved. It took them all a while to calm down knowing that peace in their country was finally in reach. Although they were happy, they all knew that they should have to pay a price. "Ryo-san, what are your conditions?" asked Yahiko. "It's just one condition. You must do whatever you can to keep Hanzo from interfering with the war between Konoha, the Rock, and the Cloud. I believe you also don't want to see him get involved. Our purpose is the same." Yahiko looked back at his friends. Nagato was expressionless, and Konan gave him a little nod. "If that's the only condition, then we agree. On behalf of the Akatsuki, I agree with your condition, and I promise not to let Hanzo interfere with your war." Yahiko answered in a serious tone. "Good, I also promise on behalf of Konoha that all our battle will not affect the Rain country. Now, if you may, could you provide me with written responses to both the Hokage and the Tsuchikage?" Yahiko nodded and wrote the replies, and the contract between the two parties were completed. With that being done with, Ryo started looking at the trio with more curiosity. The three all looked older than him, but with his temperament it looked as if all four were peers. The one that caught his eyes the most was of course Konan. He didn't have any sort of feelings towards her, but he just couldn't help but be attracted by her rare beauty. Just like in the manga, Konan was wearing a black Akatsuki uniform embroidered with red clouds. Her hair was light violet blue, her amber eyes were large. At the time, she didn't wear the labret piercing or the light blue paper flower on her head. She looked more playful and cuter than she was later on in the manga. Ryo then turned his eyes towards Nagato and pretended to be surprised. The latter thought that Ryo was disturbed by his eyes and subconsciously avoided Ryo's look. "Your hair looks exactly like my sensei's. Is your last name Uzumaki?" asked Ryo. Nagato apparently did not expect that Ryo would be concerned with his hair and last name. He first looked back at Ryo, and then nodded. "Then you and my sensei are both survivors of the Uzumaki clan. I didn't expect my sensei's clan to have a member in this organization." Nagato heard Ryo, and his body trembled. He did not expect to have surviving clan members. "Great Nagato! You have surviving clan members. You're not alone." Yahiko excitedly patted on Nagato's shoulder. "Ryo-san, can you tell us about the Uzumaki clan?" Konan saw that Nagato was speechless, and spoke out for him. Ryo nodded. "The Uzumaki and Senju clans are distant relatives. Both are descendants of the legendary Rikudo Sennin. With Ryo's small narrative, the three formed a simple understanding about the Uzumaki clan. After they learn about their descendants from the Rikudo Sennin, the three looked like they had finally understood a lot of what was concerning them. When they heard that the clan is almost extinct, Nagato had some sense of loneliness, but he was strongly interested in the few survivors. "Thank you for telling us about all of this, Ryo-san." Nagato sincerely thanked Ryo. Ryo wasn't just being nice. In fact, his main purpose was giving Nagato a stronger sense of belonging, to keep him from going astray in the future. "By the way, who is your sensei?" "From what I'm seeing, Nagato is definitely Kage tier, and Yahiko and Konan look to be Jounin tier. Your sensei must be someone amazing. Ryo tried to bring up the subject of Jiraiya. As soon as he mentioned their teacher, all three's faces were full of nostalgia. After they looked at each other, Konan was the one to speak. You actually must know our sensei. He is one of the legendary Sunin, Jiraiya. He was here before, and he taught us for 3 years. It turned out to be you. Said Ryo, showing surprise. I heard Jiraiya-san mention that he had 3 disciples in the Rain country. Ryo, you know our sensei. Yahiko heard Ryo's words and he quickly approached him with his eyes open wide. Of course. Our relationship is pretty good. I've learned half the ninjutsu I know from him. How has sensei been doing recently? Hearing Ryo's answer, Yahiko asked with some excitement. Ah. Well, he can breathe, eat and sleep, but he's in war you know. He can't peek at women's spas, so I bet he's not feeling too good. Peeping at women's spas? Sensei would never do such a thing. Konan hugged herself in panic. Why not? I found him before Konan, watching you with wicked eyes. Yahiko added fuel to the flame. Finding a common topic, Ryo and the 3 were drawn into conversations, talking about their experiences. Their laughter rang out of the camp from time to time. In the country, Jiraiya kept sneezing for the entirety of the afternoon. Chapter 120, Kajin's Summoning Contract. Ryo stayed with the Akatsuki for 3 days, becoming very friendly with the trio over time. During those days, Ryo kept reminding the trio to be vigilant when dealing with Hanzo. Spending time with them, Ryo felt that they were much nicer and more innocent than what they had turned into in the manga, so he just kept reminding them. Over the course of those 3 days, the Akatsuki started taking action as well. To Ryo's surprise, there wasn't really much difference in abilities between the Rain and the Anaitsuki's regular ninjas. The Akatsuki was a secret organization that took action in the dark, they never confronted the Rain village face to face. However, they kept interfering with the execution of their assassination mission. The Rain village's economy relied mainly on the rewards from assassination missions, and some of their secret ninjutsu were very helpful with that. With the Akatsuki's interference, the mission completion rate of the Rain ninjas plummeted, and many employers started losing trust in the Rain village. Hanzo also was taking his own measures, but the Akatsuki were cautious, and were not being fooled by his traps. With that, Hanzo had to give up on the idea of going to the Lightning Country's battlefield in order to focus on dealing with the local Akatsuki. Ryo's task was successfully completed, and after bidding farewell to the trio, he summoned Fukasaku and asked him to take him into the Lightning Country's battlefield via reverse summoning. Ryo and Fukasaku had just appeared in Konoha's Lightning Country camp, when a silver falcon wrapped with lightning chakra flew towards Ryo. A falcon is really fast in the air, and the speed brought by the lightning chakra mode made it more like a thunderbolt. Fukasaku was startled by the falcon's sudden appearance. Just as he was preparing to fight, he saw it landing on Ryo's shoulder. Hey! You're really mean, not taking me along when you go out to play. Kajin left the lightning chakra mode and started complaining on Ryo's shoulder. Sorry, this time I forgot to bring you along. Ryo tried to make Kajin feel better. Fukasaku was looking at Kajin with surprise, as it was the first time he saw a summoned beast in the lightning chakra mode. However, with careful observation, Fukasaku found that there was no summoning blood covenant tied to Kajin. In other words, the bird was qualified to become a summoned beast, but no one had any contract with her. Ryo-chan, why didn't you make a summoning contract with this bird? Do you worry that we at Mount Myaboku won't agree? Asked Fukasaku. It's not that, Fukasaku-sama. I found Kajin in the forest and brought her into the camp. Upon inspection, I found that she had chakra in her body, and that she was smarter than usual. So I taught her talking and ninjutsu with Kushina Ne-san. Ryo explained. Fukasaku's face showed his surprise. Finding such a smart bird in the forest, and training it until they point making it fit to be a summoned beast, what kind of luck is this? Ryo-chan, you can make a summoning contract with young Kajin. With a summoning contract, you could summon her at any time. Fukasaku-san, can she sign such a contract with several people? Asked Ryo. Fukasaku went and observed Kajin, and then summoned Jirotora in. He inspected some worn scrolls that the latter gave him, and made Kajin spill a drop of blood upon one of them. Her blood slowly merged with scroll, and after its full integration, Fukasaku sighed for the good fortune of Ryo. Ryo-chan, this is an unused summoning contract scroll from Mount Myaboko's stocks. I just made Kajin-chan spill some of her blood on it. Now, just sign your name with your own blood, and leave you fingerprints on the seal just like before, and you'll be able to use summoning to summon Kajin. After that, Fukasaku handed the scroll to Ryo. Ryo couldn't wait to sign, then made Kajin fly into the distance. After she went out of sight, Ryo used summoning to bring her in, and the experiment was a great success. Kajin flew out of a small cloud of white smoke forming underneath his hand. Ryo showed his gratitude to Fukasaku, but the latter's attention was focused on Kajin. Kajin-chan, now you're one of the summoned beasts. I hope you can expand your clan and form a new race of summoned beasts as soon as possible. Kajin had no idea what Fukasaku was talking about, but from his serious face, she felt like it was a serious matter, and she nodded in response. Fukasaku was very satisfied with her attitude, and returned to Mount Myaboko after saying goodbye. Ryo looked at the scroll and had a headache. Kajin became this smart and strong by absorbing the Ryo-Myako's chakra. Making a new race of summoned beasts, does it mean that he now has to try to find a male grey magpie? He shook his head and stopped thinking about it, and took the contract and wanted to find Kushina. If Ryo was like a parent to Kajin, Kushina was more like a nanny and teacher to her. She taught her everything from counting to ninjutsu. She was obviously really eligible to sign this contract. Ryo entered Sage mode, and tried to locate Kushina, and he found her teaching Kotori Uzumaki how to refine her chakra. Kotori was already 8 years old. Originally, Shinshiro tried to make his daughter a civilian. But her recent kidnapping rang the warning bell to him, and he decided to make her a ninja. As an Uzumaki, Kotori had all the high vitality and the immense chakra that an Uzumaki usually has. Ryo felt that her body had as much chakra as a regular jonin, even though she was obviously a beginner. Seeing her have that much chakra right off the bat, Ryo felt really jealous. He was still struggling to increase his own chakra stores. Ryo, you're back? Did the mission go smoothly? Kushina looked surprised to see Ryo back so soon. Yes, I'm back. We'll talk about the mission later. First, I have a gift for you, said Ryo as he handed the contract to Kushina. What is this? Kushina didn't have a summoned beast, and never saw a summoning contract, so she curiously asked. I know what it is, Ne-san, this is a summoning contract. With it, you can call Kajin from far away to be at your side. Ryo didn't get time to talk, as Kajin went on and answered. Kushina Ne-san, you only need to sign with your blood and leave your fingerprints, and then you can use summoning to summon Kajin whenever you want. Following Ryo's instruction, Kushina signed the contract, and then summoned Kajin from Ryo's shoulder to her side. Kushina didn't have much interest in summoned beasts. She had the Kyubi and she felt that was enough for her. However, it's different with Kajin. Kajin was like a child that she had raised herself. The young falcon was very affectionate for her teacher. Being able to sign a summoning contract with Kajin, Kushina was very happy with this gift. Chapter 121, The Outbreak of the Battle. Kushina Ne-san, how did Kajin learn the lightning chakra mode? Ryo asked, as he saw Kajin going in and out of the mode. Oh, yeah, you can thank the Cloud Quasi-Kage for that. Troy. Why would he do that? Ryo asked in shock. Kushina laughed, and after Ryo heard the story himself, he was laughing as well. Initially, after Troy was sent back to Konoha's camp by the rock, Minato sealed his chakra, and left him be. The camp was full of ninjas, and without his chakra, Troy was at best of the caliber of a strong civilian. Even so, Troy didn't give up of the idea of escaping, wandering around the camp, and trying to find a chance to escape. After Ryo left, Kajin often went to the gate to see if Ryo was in sight. That's when she and Troy met for the first time. Troy didn't pay attention at first, but seeing that she went to the gate 7 or 8 times a day, he thought that she shared his purpose of leaving the camp. So he took the initiative and contacted her, trying to become friends with her. In order to increase their chances of success, Troy went as far as helping her perfect the lightning chakra mode, by modifying it to suit her non-human body. When he was successful with that, Troy proposed that the two of them should leave the camp. Kajin happily agreed, but Kushina's education was very successful. Even though Kajin wanted to go out and play immediately, she still went back to ask Kushina for permission. This question spelled Troy's demise, as Kushina thought that someone was trying to kidnap her precious bird, and she went and hit Troy fiercely. She also told Kajin that anyone that tries to take her out besides her and Ryo is a bad guy. With that, Kajin learned the lining chakram mode from Troy. But because she had only learned it recently, she didn't have much control over it, and she occasionally would go out of it without choosing to do so. Indeed, when it came to understanding the mode, Ryo wasn't as good as the Cloud Ninjas. His lightning chakram mode is just a combination of what he knew about the fourth Reikage, and Sakumo's imitation of the third Reikage. For the hidden cloud, the lightning chakram mode was in the center of most of their ninjutsu. It had been passed down for generations, and they were very familiar with it. It's no wonder that Troy was able to teach Kajin what Ryo could not. As Ryo was about to start studying Kajin's lightning chakram mode, someone arrived. Ryo-san, Minato-san wants you in his tent immediately. Ryo could only hand Kajin to Kushina, for Minato should only summon him if it's something important. Ryo entered Minato's tent, and he found all the jonins and clan representatives already there. Minato motioned him to sit, and then asked for his report of what happened in the Rain Country. Ryo told the story to the public, and of course kept the relationship between Jiraiya and the trio to himself. Knowing that Hanzo will not make presence in their war, everyone was relieved. Without this demigod on the enemy's side, the pressure on Konoha was greatly reduced. Minato then went on to mention the recent intelligence about the cloud. According to the Hyugas and the Abarames, the cloud were very likely to take the initiative and start a battle. Minato's words made everyone's faces very serious. They all knew that if this battle is to be, it's going to decisive and of a major scale. They must be careful. The cloud's movements were very obvious, and the rock noticed them as well. Oniki was also negotiating with his ninjas on how to deal with such a sudden development. Tsuchikage-sama, I believe that our alliance with Konoha should continue. Their camp and ours in the Lightning Country should not be able to fight the cloud individually. A Jonin said. Yeah, he's right. Our strength here is really inferior to that of the cloud. Han also agreed. On their own, neither of the two camps was able to deal with the cloud in their country. Although Oniki was very stubborn and proud, he did not take the lives of his ninjas lightly. In fact, they did not even need to make such a suggestion, for he was already planning to cooperate with Konoha. The next day, Minato and Oniki secretly met. The two agreed that whenever the cloud would attack any of them, the other would help in dealing with the threat. The battlefield was getting tenser by the moment, the wind was raging, and the grass on the ground could not be seen for it was all covered with soldiers. Everyone knew that the battle was about to start. At the end of the third day after Minato and Oniki's agreement, the third Reikage led troops of 20,000 cloud ninjas and head to the rock camp. Receiving the news, Oniki was ready to fight. The third Reikage, along with A, Killer B, and Uchitai Ne, all four were Kage tier ninjas leading the ranks of their troops. The rock on the other hand, had only Oniki and Han. Moreover, both Killer B and Uchitai were perfect Jinchuriki, and Han was far less masterful of his Baiju's power. After Konoha heard of the cloud advancement, Minato rushed to the battlefield with Kushina using Flying Thunder God, while Ryo followed them leading 8,000 of Konoha's ninjas to the battlefield. As soon as Minato and Kushina arrived, they saw the Hakubi and the Nibi in all their glory. The two aimed together, and sent their Baiju Dama towards their enemies. Immediately, Minato used his Flying Thunder God, Guiding Thunder, and transferred the two Baiju Dama to a remote place. It was no problem for Minato transfer Baiju Dama of this level at his current strength. After all, in the manga, he was able to transfer the Juhobi's Baiju Dama. Although transferring the Juhobi's Baiju Dama might have relied on perks given by Edo Tensei, these two Baiju Dama are by no means comparable to that of the Juhobi. Oniki originally planned to make Han face the two Jinchuriki's attacks, but seeing them being transferred by Minato, he was relieved. Minato. A saw his rival suddenly appearing, and his heart trembled. After their last battle, A even started feeling that Minato was invincible. Father, he's Konoha's Yellow Flash. Minato Namikaze? So he is really worthy of that name. The third saw Minato's move and was amazed. The third Reikage wasn't expecting such a situation, but he was still confident that he could beat both camps at once. After all, they had two perfect Jinchuriki on the battlefield. Yo, this time I won't let you go, Baka Yero. Kono Yero. Killer B rapped his threat to Minato. Seeing the two other Jinchuriki, Kushina was a little excited. This was the first time she saw any Baiju besides Kurama. Kurama, can the seven-tailed coat mode beat the Hakubi? Kushina was eager to try her strength. It is enough. My strength is not something to which they could compare. Kurama said disdainfully. Kurama, can I also become you like they did? If we go to a full transformation, you'll be swallowed up by my chakra after no more than 2 minutes. Kurama said crudely. It doesn't matter. I trust you, you'll definitely protect me. Kushina said with a silly smile. The Kyuubi helplessly sighed and did not refuse. Chapter 122, Kushina and the Kyuubi. Brought to Konoha to become the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, Kushina was very afraid of inheriting this power. That lasted until she heard her predecessor, Uzumaki Mito, say to her, "We came here to be the vessels of the Kyuubi. But before that, we must find love and fill the vessel with it. Then, even if we had to live as the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, we could still be happy." And with Minato's support, Kushina was able to put down her fears of the Kyuubi and to overcome it. Then, Ryo came along, and his words, "Baijo can coexist with humans in peace," changed her attitude towards Kurama drastically. His sentence gave her courage to try and reach out to the Kyuubi. With time, she got to know it, only to realize that this so-called demon was no more than a big angry fox. With that, she had no more fears of Kurama, and often talked to him about what happened in her life. For Kurama, Kushina also was special. Besides the Rikudo Sennin, she was the first human he ever felt good about. At the beginning, he could feel all her fears and worries. With time, he felt her attitude changing slowly. After hearing Ryo's words, she started observing him from time to time. Being sealed into her body, the Kyuubi could do nothing about that. He could only pretend to be asleep all the time. What he didn't expect was that after a while, she was no longer satisfied with just observing him. She began talking to him directly about the boring things in her life. Along with that, the Kyuubi also started sensing her goodwill towards him. Feeling Kushina's goodwill, was no longer that stubborn, and occasionally started answering her with a few words. Getting along like that made the Kyuubi a lot less wary against Kushina, until she asked him, one day, if he wanted to see the world outside. With that, they reached a consensus. Kurama doesn't try to take over Kushina's body, and she removes her seals that she put upon him. As soon as she did that, the powerful hatred within the Kyuubi took over, causing her to go rampant. However, when she came out of it, not only did she not blame him for that, but she also said she believed in him. With that, the last brick in the wall between them was taken away. For the first time, Kurama felt this good to have a Jinchuriki. He started helping Kushina control his power, and Kushina started being able to use his powers reliably. Originally, Kurama thought that he could stay with Kushina until she grows old, but Ryo's behavior made him suspicious, and his answer made him knew that things weren't going to be that easy. Then, recently, there was the Riran incident, and he saw the young teenager that actually had his powers. With that, Kurama knew for sure, one day, he will be extracted and even manipulated to kill Kushina. Since that day, Kurama had been forcing Kushina to practice, and pushing her towards the mastery of his powers. He knew, that whenever she's able to become a perfect Jinchuriki, he should be afraid of no genjutsu. Under his special training, Kushina became able to control the seven-tailed cloak mode. He was very satisfied with her progress. Therefore, when she wanted, just like the Nibi and Hakubi Jinchurikis, to turn into a full Baijo form, Kurama ended up agreeing in the end after some reluctance, as a reward to her efforts in training. On the battlefield, the third Hokage ordered the ninjas to retreat and leave the battlefield to his two Jinchuriki. Han and Onaki's faces were heavy as they came out of their troops. Han knew that he couldn't cope with either of the two, as he wasn't a perfect Jinchuriki. And even with Onaki's help, they shouldn't be able to win. Minato knew that all too well, and prepared to join the two for the fight. "Minato, wait! This is my fight!" Kushina stopped Minato. The latter never saw such a serious look upon his face. Seeing Kushina's firm eyes, he knew that he could never stop her. He smiled, and left the matter to her. She put his kunao into her bag, and entered the battlefield. Onaki and Han looked strangely at Kushina. Her strength appeared to be caged here to them. But the amounts of chakra owned by the enemies were immense, and such a battle should be one that could bring death upon her. She paid no attention to the eyes of the two, for she felt the pressure of the two Baijo's chakra as she approached them. However, she didn't have the slightest fear. "Kurama, let's show them who the best partners are." Finishing her words, she was wrapped in the Kyuubi's chakra, her body became golden, and behind her appeared a golden cloak. The people in the center of the battlefield were stunned by her changes, and everyone could feel the immensity of the vast ocean of chakra within her body. The two enemy Jinchurikis looked at each other, and they joined force to use Baijo Dama. They already knew that it was the Kyuubi, the most powerful existence in the universe. Crush them. Facing the bombardment of Baijodama, Kushina subconsciously wanted to dodge. But she heard the Kyuubi's words, and her confidence increased enough to take Ryo's ice blade, infuse it with the Kyuubi's chakra and use it to destroy the two Baijodama. Minato sighed and noticed that his back was soaked in sweat. Kushina facing the two Baijodama scared him to death. The Kyuubi. It's the Kyuubi. After that face-off, the Gobi within Han's body trembled. For the first time, Han heard the Gobi panicking in such a manner. While Kyuubi's performance just now was so magnificent, it shouldn't be that scary to the Gobi. Then, Han knew why the Gobi was so afraid. Right after Kushina destroyed the two Baijodama, the Kyuubi's transformation started reaching completion. Not so far from the battlefield, Ryo was leading the rest of Konoha's ninjas to battle. From time to time, he sensed the battlefield with his sage mode. Suddenly, he felt a powerful familiar chakra, and felt smothered by its pressure. The Kyuubi had appeared. On the battlefield, a golden Kyuubi appeared in the middle, turning everyone quiet. Even birds and vultures in the sky stopped making any sound. That horrible chakra made everyone terrified, and Han understood well why the Gobi was so afraid. For the cloud, the Nibi stepped back a few steps after seeing the complete Kyuubi. In the manga, the Kyuubi was able to defeat 5 Baiju on his own, earning the Hakubi's praising. Now, with its full appearance on the enemy side, the Hakubi felt terrified. When did Kushina completely control the Kyuubi? Minato was surprised to see the Kyuubi. Kushina, only 2 minutes. I'm too strong, and your body and mind will not stand my chakra. More than 2 minutes, and my hatred will take over. The Kyuubi reminded. Let's go, Kurama, said Kushina, with her eyes on the 2 Baiju in front of her. Chapter 123, The Kyuubi's Might. What can one do in 2 minutes? For some, it takes 2 minutes to peel an apple, or to get the mail from downstairs. In 2 minutes, Kushina changed the situation on the battlefield drastically. Kushina in the Kyuubi mode did not have any wasted movements. They chose the simplest and roughest way of hand-to-hand combat, directly taking a punch at the Hakubi in the stomach. Considering its size, the Kyuubi was practically the yellow flash of the Baiju. The Hakubi was too slow to avoid the attack and it flew away from the impact of the punch. Seeing that, the Nibi rushed towards the Kyuubi. Matatabi was a monster cat, and of course, that came along with a cat's agility and flexibility. Therefore, the Kyuubi took care of the cumbersome Hakubi first, to be able to turn his full attention to the Nibi afterwards. A hint of mockery appeared upon the Kyuubi's face as it watched the Nibi's attack. He reached and quickly grabbed Matatabi by the neck and lifted him into the air. The Nibi struggled to break loose, but in vain. The Kyuubi raised his fist and hit him directly. With that punch, the Nibi stopped struggling, so the Kyuubi threw it at the Hakubi that had just managed to stand up. With that, the Hakubi flew away again, and the Nibi disappeared, leaving only an unconscious Ujito behind. The Nibi was taken care of, and only the Hakubi remained. Abominable fox, take this Baijodama, Baka Yero, Kono Yero. Killer Bee clearly did not give up. He once again stood up, and condensed a Baijodama with all the power he had within him. Kushina, you can't use a Baijodama right now, let me out. Kurama said that, and she did not argue, letting him take over her body. Facing the Hakubi's Baijodama, the Kyuubi, while not afraid, was pretty careful. He opened his mouth, and molded a Baijodama that was much smaller than that of the Hakubi. The 2 Baijodama collided midway between their users. If size was indicative of the outcome of this cohesion, B's Baijodama should have emerged as victor. However, the result left everyone surprised. The Kyuubi's Baijodama went straight through its counterpart, leaving B's Baijodama exploding midway. It flew unstoppably towards the Hakubi. Behind him were the forces of the hidden cloud. This Baijodama could not reach them without causing a disaster, and the Hakubi and Killer Bee knew that all too well. They used their own body to block its path. The Kyuubi was reputedly able to raise tsunamis and flatten mountains with just a single swipe of a tail, so the consequences of blocking its Baijodama with one's own body could be expected. After the Baijodama hit, the Hakubi was burned all over, and several of his tails were blown off. However, that didn't make him fall. He gasped and stared at the Kyuubi, prepared to block his next attack. At that time, the 2 minutes were over. Kushina wasn't able to bear such immense chakra anymore, and her consciousness began becoming blurred. Kurama worried that she was going to be taken over, and turned to Minato saying, "I'll hand Kushina over to you." Saying that, Kurama's body started fading as his massive chakra returned to Kushina's body. Without the Kyuubi's chakra's support, Kushina fell through the air, and Minato caught her. She looked at him with some distress. "Minato, how did we do, Kurama and I?" Kushina asked in a weak voice. "You've done fantastic. Now it's time for you to rest. It's my fight from now on." Kushina nodded with a smile and fainted. Minato used the Flying Thunder God to get her back to Konoha's camp, summoned Gamabunta to protect her, and then returned to the battlefield. Whether it was the rock or the cloud ninjas, none of them was used to Minato's Flying Thunder God. When the third Hokage saw Minato back, with the Kyuubi's chakra gone, he and his troops were finally relieved. Everyone on the battlefield was stunned by the Kyuubi's immense power, as it manhandled two other Baiju effortlessly. Just like the Nibi and the Hakubi had brought courage to their hearts before, the Kyuubi brought them down and made most of them have one thought: run. Now that the Kyuubi Jinchuriki was absent, the pressure put upon the third Hokage was decreased. Although the Hakubi was disabled by the Kyuubi, a Baiju's recovery ability was extremely terrifying. In no time, B had about half of his power restored. It was impossible to get the Nibi back into the battle, as Kushina's attack almost killed Yujito-ne. On the other side, Ryo was fully aware of what happened on the battlefield. In a little over a minute, the Nibi's chakra disappeared, and the Hakubi's chakra also became really weak. "That Kyuubi is the real deal." Two perfect Jinchuriki were taken down in under 2 minutes. Ryo whispered. The situation on the battlefield changed drastically. The high-end combat power without the Nibi was equal between the two camps. The Cloud's overall power was the closest to that of Konoha, and they were able to dispatch 20,000 ninjas led by 4 Kage tiers. Ryo suspected that this was their limit, and that they could not get more forces on this battlefield. Going with such a battle on the front, Ryo was confident of Minato's ability to lead them to victory. However, such a victory should not come without a price. Konoha's and the Rock's regular ninjas were about 18,000 people. This wasn't as much as the troops of the Cloud, so any victory should be tragic. While Ryo didn't have time to worry about the Rock ninjas, he worried about those of Konoha. Thinking about that, Ryo finally decided to take a gamble. He ordered the troops following him to stop, and handed over their command to the strongest man after him. Uchiha Kataki was to lead the 8,000 men to support Minato, while Ryo's destination changed to become the Cloud Village. Yes, Ryo's idea was to single-handedly attack the Cloud Village. The Cloud had so many ninjas deployed on the battlefield, there shouldn't be many of them left in the village. If only 1 to 2,000 were there, Ryo was confident in his ability to handle them, and then, the village would fall in his hands. He entered the Ice Lightning Chakra mode, and used both his Ice Teleportation and Lightning Chakra Flicker to reach the village in no time. The village is located in a range of tall mountains, and surrounded by clouds. The air was moist and comforting, but Ryo wasn't there to enjoy the scenery. Once he reached the village, Ryo entered Sage mode and sensed the number of ninjas in the village. He found that his expectations were correct. There were less than 1,000 ninjas left in the village, with the strongest among them being Quasi-Kages. Most of the rest were Chunins and Genins. Ryo also confirmed the civilian gatherings around the village. While he wanted victory, he didn't want it badly enough to sacrifice any civilians. After confirming everything, he left Sage mode and entered the Ice Lightning Chakra mode. He condensed an ice bow like the one he used in the Wave Country, and an arrow appeared on it. Ryo kept injecting natural energy within the arrow until it reached its limit. The sensor ninjas who were still in the village sensed an abnormality outside. But before they managed to report anything, the arrow was already released. Chapter 124, Freezing the Cloud Village. After Ryo's ice arrow flew over into the Cloud Village, it became an adult fist-sized, glittering ice flower. The natural energy that was compressed within it began to expand as the ice arrow turned into an ice flower. The ice flower was getting bigger and bigger, and a cloud sensor ninja could clearly perceive the horrifying energy within the flower. He ran to report, but he hadn't moved away a few steps before he noticed another arrow coming from behind. He looked back at the arrow, trying to confirm its source, and that allowed him to realize Ryo's position. Ryo controlled the arrow's trajectory, and the sensor ninja's face changed greatly, and he wanted to dodge the arrow. Unfortunately for him, it took the level of a Jonin to escape Ryo's arrow. His heart was pierced from behind and he died on the spot. The reality was that the death of this sensor ninja was irrelevant to the success of Ryo's plan. He only killed them with another arrow to be on the cautious side. As the ice flower bloomed, Ryo moved into the cloud village with ice teleportation. At that time, with the large size that the ice flower had reached, many ninjas also noticed it. Most of them just curiously stood watching ice growing in mid-air. As the ice flower grew to the size of a house, Ryo controlled it again from distance. It burst into countless ice shards that went all over the cloud village. Ryo used this rain of ice shards to teleport and jump back and forth all over the town. With his ice scalpel in hand, he madly harvested the souls of the cloud ninjas. The cloud ninjas watched as their companions fell one after another, and they all panicked. They wanted to find the criminal, but all they saw was a blue spark teleporting between the countless shards. They soon found that they couldn't catch that spark, and they panicked even more and fled. Those who lost their fighting spirit were not followed by Ryo. His only enemies were the ones that resisted him. Demon. It's a demon. After killing nearly 300 of them, even those who resisted at the start began to collapse. On the end, only a Hokage from the cloud stayed behind. Facing his last enemy, Ryo gave him all due respect. He stopped teleporting and stood before him. Finally being able to see Ryo, the Hokage did not hesitate and entered the lightning chakra mode. He used the third Hokage's strongest weapon, the Jigokyuzuki. The Jigokyuzuki was a technique that the third Hokage created basing off of the lightning chakra mode. It used 4, 3, or 1 finger, with its strength increasing as the number of fingers is reduced. Facing probable death, this Hokage opted to go straight the 1-finger Jigokyuzuki. Ryo did not dodge. This man, who didn't care about his life and death to protect his village, was worthy of utmost respect. If he didn't stand in Ryo's way, he would have survived. But this man did not escape, guarding his village even after remaining on his own. Ryo's right condensed a raise Nan, and then he infused it with lightning chakra, and collided with his foe's Jigokyuzuki. The outcome was expected. If it was the third Hokage facing him, Ryo's Denjiki raise Nan would have probably lost. But this was just a Hokage, and Ryo emerged as victor. After defeating his enemy, Ryo gave a final glance at the enemy that he had respected, and then ran towards the center of the cloud village. The cloud village had close to 1,000 ninjas defending it, and about 500 of them were wiped out by Ryo. The others all escaped. Therefore, Ryo had nothing standing in his path towards the Blue Hokage's office building. Ryo had no interest in following these men. They were all weak, too weak to form a challenge, and he also hoped that someone would report what happened to the Hokage. Ryo once again condensed an ice bow, and a crystal clear arrow appeared upon it. Ryo loosened his finger and the arrow quickly flew towards the Hokage's office building. It continued to expand as before, and eventually exploded, turning the whole building into ruins. Ryo kept wandering around the village, destroying 7 or 8 of their most important institutions. The ninjas who went into hiding, after seeing Ryo's actions, immediately sent people to the battlefield. On the battlefront, Minato was fighting Oniki was fighting the third Hokage, and the Gobu was fighting the Hakubi. The rest of the ninjas were in an all-out bloody battle. The third Hokage's lightning chakra mode was just amazing, even being able to protect him from Oniki's golem jutsu. When Oniki used his dust release, the agile third Hokage was always able to avoid his attacks. He couldn't help but be on the back foot. The situation was the opposite on Minato's side. A was also the speed-type ninja, but Minato was faster. He was only being outmatched the entire time by Minato, but for some reason, the latter wasn't going for the kill. The Hakubi and Killer Bee were severely wounded by Kushina, and even with their amazing healing rate, they could only fight at half strength for a while. With that, their power level was comparable to that of Han. As both sides were in a deadlock, one of the clouds fleeing ninjas arrived to the battlefield and told the Jonin closest to him about what happened in the village. The Jonin's face changed and went to the third Hokage. As the latter saw ninjas from his village coming over, he repelled Oniki and asked the Jonin, "What is it?" "Hokage-sama, this is not good. The village had been attacked, and the attacker is caged here. Half our ninjas in the village had been annihilated." "What?" The third Hokage's face changed. "Retreat. Tell everyone about my order. Everyone must immediately retreat." No matter how much he cared about the outcome of this battle, the village came first to its cage. The third Hokage immediately decided to withdraw after hearing the news. Oniki and Minato quickly noticed that the enemies were moving closer to the rear, apparently wanting to retreat. Seeing that, Minato breathed a sigh of relief. The situation was definitely a lose-lose, and retreating was the best outcome possible. But Oniki did not think the same. The hatred between the rock and the cloud was not born yesterday, and he didn't want to let go of such an opportunity. The high-ranking ninjas of the cloud were shocked learning that the village was attacked. They wanted to go back to its rescue immediately, but the rock's pursuit was overwhelming. You go first. I'll hold them off. The third Hokage said to everyone. Out of trust of their cage's strength, they all didn't hesitate and left, leaving behind only the third Hokage to face Konoha and the rock's troops. Seeing that, Minato ordered his troops to withdraw from the battle. This was a grudge between the rock and the cloud, and Minato didn't want to interfere. Chapter 125, Proposal. Minato led his troops out of the battlefield. Although Oniki was somewhat dissatisfied with that, he wasn't in a situation to confront Minato at the time. The third Hokage was left on his own. To Oniki, this was a golden opportunity to kill him. After Minato left, Oniki immediately let all his troops attack the third Hokage. The third Hokage's face was heavy. Yes, he was seen as an invincible man. But was he really invincible? The rock ninjas were innumerable. Facing nearly 10,000 men along with Oniki, he realized that this might not end up well. In fact, when Konoha and the rock got united, that should have made him retreat already. With Kushina's attack, the effect of having to perfect Jinchuriki on the battlefield was absolutely decimated, and the third Hokage actually wanted to stop the fight. He was the village's Kage, so naturally he didn't lack wisdom. It was very clear to him that this battle was going to end in a double defeat. He was actually waiting for a reason to retreat early, one that wouldn't hurt the Cloud Ninja's morale. However, he didn't expect that said reason would actually be an attack on his village. Under these circumstances, the third Hokage chose to be left behind by his troops to block the rock ninjas, even at the expense of his life. Even though he knew that his death might be the end, he did not hesitate. For the future of the village, he could sacrifice anything including his life. In contrast to the Hokage's gloominess, Oniki had a smile on his face. He was about to get rid of one of his biggest worries, he couldn't help but smile. Under his orders, the third Hokage was rushed at by the rock ninjas. The Hokage's lightning chakram mode seemed to have become ever more violent, and he started throw those rushing on him away. The two Kages, along with the third Hokage and Hanzo, were at the top of the scale when it came to power in World of Ninja. The ordinary rock ninjas were all jumping to their deaths. A single strike from the third Hokage was capable of throwing away dozens. Oniki saw that happening and his face became heavy. However, he didn't call for retreat. They had already started, they must end this and kill this enemy. Over 10,000 of the rock ninjas kept coming in waves at the third Hokage, who tirelessly waved his fists throwing them away. As time passed, and after over 2 hours of constant attack, he still didn't have a scratch on his body, while corpses of the rock ninjas were paving the floors all around him. Oniki was getting more and more frustrated, as the third Hokage's power seemed to be beyond all imagination. And because of the corpses of his fellow rock ninjas surrounding his target, he couldn't just hit his foe with dust release without destroying them. The third Hokage's eyes were red, like a raging bull, while the rock ninjas who saw the corpses of their fellow ninjas got more frustrated and enraged as well. They kept rushing at their target endlessly. In the Cloud Village, the troops finally returned, and Ryo, who was well aware of their arrival, had already left the village. A looked at the ruins of his village, roaring in wrath, and everyone in the Cloud troops felt the same fury. Compared to the third Hokage, A had a much more aggressive temper, and was relatively simple-minded at the time. If he wasn't reminded by a fellow ninjas, he wouldn't even think about limiting casualties. When the other Cloud ninjas did their statistics, A and some of the stronger Cloud ninjas were sitting side by side in front of the ruin of what used to be the Hokage's office building. Hey, you think that even this time, father will be okay? A was worried about the third Hokage, for he was facing over 10,000 ninjas on his own. Aniki, yo, the third Hokage is too strong and very powerful. You don't really have to worry, Baka Yero, Kono Yero. Don't call me a Baka, Yero. A hit B's head. But in any way, B's words make A feel much better. Although he was reckless, he knew that his presence in the village was necessary, and didn't go back to the battlefield on his own. In the Cloud's current state, they shouldn't be fighting. As for Konoha, Minato returned to the camp after a while. Worrying about Kushina, he directly went to see her. The first thing he saw was Kushina remaining upon Gamabunta's head. The latter felt ignored, for Minato didn't seem to even notice his presence. Without thinking, he jumped to the top of his head, and squatted down. Kushina, who was opening her eyes, had her vision blurry, and she felt like she was on that night when Minato saved her in her childhood. Kushina, your red hair is still so beautiful. She saw his bright smile and heard his praise, and her pale face turned red in an instant. Kushina, let's get married after this war. That was the last thing she expected to hear under such circumstances. Her mind went blank, and Minato smiled and said nothing. He just used Flying Thunder God and took her to his tent so that she could rest. The poor Gamabuntai who had to endure their romantics just relieved himself from his duties and returned to Mount Myaboku. The other Konoha ninjas didn't hear Minato say a thing, as they were all too far away. However, they saw him hold Kushina and leave, and they all felt awkward. An hour later, Ryo returned to the camp as well. The first thing he did was going to Minato's tent. He had something important to immediately say to him. When he arrived, all he saw was the couple kissing each other passionately. He got intrigued and just stood there watching with a smile. And the two, with Kushina's enhanced senses and Minato's yellow flash awareness, were both so out of it that they didn't notice him. As their kiss ended, Kushina opened her eyes and saw Ryo standing there, and her face turned as red as a ripe apple, and then she gasped and fainted. Ryo had been a doctor in his past life, and great medical ninja here. He could recognize someone faking fainting with ease, but he said nothing here. Being a man, Minato didn't care as much, and his face didn't blush, nor did he gasp when seeing Ryo. He calmly asked, Ryo, what do you want? Ryo was impressed by his calmness, while finding it funny as well. He felt like teasing him, but he didn't have time for that. He said, Minato ni-san, you and I should immediately attack the Cloud Village at once. Attacking the Cloud? Why? Minato didn't want to get involved with the battle between the rock and the cloud. If Ryo didn't have a convincing reason, Minato wasn't going for it. The third Ryaka is being attacked by Onaki's troops. While he's as strong as they come, it's only a matter of time before he's killed. We should just gain time for the rock, and not let the cloud rescue the third Raikage. When their cage dies, the cloud would certainly want to wage war against the rock again. With that, we could force the cloud to sign a peace treaty, and the Lightning Country war front will be over. Minato gave what Ryo suggested some thought, and then finally nodded.